Hello, wonderful people. Welcome to Dark Harry, your story destination. We have an absolute treat for you today. What if the Addams family arrived at the Battle of Hogwarts and fought alongside Harry? Voldemort surrendered. If you're enjoying these stories, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support keeps the stories coming. With that said, let the adventure begin. Chapter 1. When darkness calls to darkness. The storm outside the Addams mansion raged with delicious fury. Lightning crackled across the sky, illuminating the dilapidated Victorian structure in brief, ghostly flashes. Inside the drawing room, candles flickered as the Addams family sat around their ancient seance table, hands linked, eyes closed. Spirits of the netherworld, Morticia intoned, her voice a silky whisper that somehow cut through the thunder, we invite you to our humble abode on this most splendid evening of atmospheric disturbance. Gomez couldn't help but steal a glance at his wife. Even after decades of marriage, her pale skin against that tight-fitting black dress drove him wild. "Tish, you're magnificent when you commune with the dead," he murmured, barely restraining himself from kissing up her arm. "Not now, mon cher," she replied, though a small smile played at her blood-red lips. "The veil is particularly thin tonight." Wednesday, now a young woman of 19 but with the same deadpan expression and braids she'd worn since childhood, sighed impatiently. "Mother, father, please focus. Grandmama's brew will lose potency if we don't complete the ritual soon." "The girl's right," Grandmama cackled, stirring a bubbling cauldron that emitted an eerie green glow. "3 bat wings, eye of newt, and the tears of a lawyer. This batch is perfect for contacting Great-Aunt Calpurnia." Uncle Fester giggled and placed a hand atop the crystal ball at the center of the table. "I've been dying to ask her where she hid those cursed emeralds before the village mob got her." Pugsley, stocky and mischievous at 17, prodded something that looked suspiciously like dynamite into his pocket. "Maybe she can finally tell me how to make that exploding quicksand she was working on." Lurch, standing stoically behind Gomez's chair, merely groaned his agreement. Thing, the disembodied hand, scuttled across the table and tapped impatiently on the crystal ball. "Patience, Thing," Morticia soothed. "Death is eternal, a few minutes won't matter." The family resumed their seance, the candles dimming as the room grew colder. The crystal ball began to swirl with mist, and a faint whisper emerged from somewhere beyond the veil. But suddenly, instead of Great-Aunt Calpurnia's expected ghoulish greeting, a different energy surged through the room. The crystal ball cracked, not a tiny fracture, but a splintering break that sent shards flying across the table. "Oh my," Morticia said, sounding pleasantly surprised rather than alarmed. The ancient mirror hanging on the wall behind them began to vibrate. Its surface rippled like disturbed water, and a faint green light pulsed from within its depths. Gomez leapt to his feet, mustache twitching with excitement. "Something magnificent is happening. Superior to our original plans. I love when that happens." Wednesday narrowed her eyes at the mirror. "That's the Black family portal. It hasn't activated since my great-great-grandmother's time," Morticia finished, rising gracefully. "How fascinating." The mirror's surface swirled faster, images flashing within, a castle under siege, masked figures hurling jets of light, children fighting for their lives, and at the center of it all, a boy with a lightning scar facing a serpentine man with glowing red eyes. "Well, that looks like a delightful conflict," Gomez declared, rubbing his hands together gleefully. Morticia stepped closer to the mirror, her expression uncharacteristically serious. "The House of Black calls for aid. I feel it in my blood." "House of Black?" Pugsley asked, already pulling out what looked suspiciously like a grenade. "My mother's side of the family, darling," Morticia explained. "A most ancient and noble wizarding lineage. We diverged from the magical community centuries ago when our particular brand of magic was deemed unsuitable." "Unsuitable?" Wednesday perked up, suddenly interested. "You never told us about wizard relatives, Mother." "It never came up, dear," Morticia said with a wave of her elegant hand. "The magical community prefers wands and incantations. We Addamses have always found power in darker, more primordial sources. She turned to Gomez. Bubble, do you remember that charming dark wizard who visited us back in the 70s? Pale fellow, rather fixated on immortality. Ah yes. Odd chap. Kept trying to recruit us for his death munchers or some such. Eaters, dear. Death eaters. Right you are, Tish. Turned him down flat, of course. Dreadfully limited vision. All that talk about blood purity when he'd mangled his own soul into pieces. Gomez shook his head disapprovingly. No appreciation for the art of proper darkness. The mirror pulsed more urgently now, the castle scenes showing increasing destruction. I believe that's him now, Morticia noted, pointing to the snake-faced man. He's aged poorly. Uncle Fester pressed his nose against the mirror. He split his soul. No wonder he looks like that. Everyone knows you keep your soul intact, it's your organs you can remove for experiments. Grandmama hobbled closer, squinting at the images. That's Hogwarts school. My second cousin Araminta attended before they expelled her for excessive enthusiasm in the Forbidden Forest. She cackled at the memory. The centaurs still tell stories about her. The house shuddered as lightning struck the weather vane, sending a surge of electricity through the mansion. Instead of shorting out the power, it seemed to energize the mirror, which now expanded to the size of a doorway. The portal is ready, Morticia announced. The House of Black summons its kin in their darkest hour. She turned to her family. Shall we answer the call? It promises to be a most invigorating family outing. To battle, then. Gomez exclaimed, rushing to a hidden panel in the wall and pulling a lever. The floor opened beneath a section of carpet, revealing an armory of bizarre and ancient weapons. Choose your implements of destruction, family. Lurch groaned questioningly. Yes, Lurch, you must come too, Morticia assured him. Giants and acromantulas will require your particular talents. Wednesday selected a crossbow with arrows that seemed to shift and wriggle of their own accord. Pugsley filled his pockets with an assortment of homemade explosives. Uncle Fester grabbed nothing but grinned maniacally, electricity already crackling between his fingertips. Grandmama hastily packed a bag with potions, powders, and what appeared to be a mummified hand. Thing hopped into Gomez's breast pocket as the man belted on a rapier and tucked several throwing knives into his suit jacket. Morticia simply gathered her flowing dress and stepped toward the portal. We must hurry. The battle appears to be at a critical juncture. Will we need to pack overnight bags? Pugsley asked practically. No need, dear, Morticia assured him. If we die, we'll simply haunt the castle. I understand it's already teeming with delightful specters. Gomez offered his arm to his wife. Shall we, cara mia? After you, mon savage. With joyful abandon, the Addams family stepped through the mirror portal, one by one disappearing into the swirling magic. The last to enter was cousin ITT, who had been napping in the corner and awoke just in time to scurry through before the portal snapped shut behind them. At Hogwarts, chaos reigned. The castle shook from magical bombardment as Death Eaters pressed their attack from all sides. In the room of requirement, Neville Longbottom helped evacuate younger students while Harry, Ron, and Hermione discussed their desperate search for the remaining Horcruxes. We still need to find something of Ravenclaw's, Harry said, frustration evident in his voice. And there's the snake. Harry, look out! Hermione shouted suddenly, pointing behind him. They whirled around, wands raised, as the air seemed to tear open. A swirling vortex of green and black energy materialized in the middle of the room, causing the evacuating students to scream and scramble back. Is it him? Is it you-know-who? A terrified second-year cried. Before anyone could answer, a tall, gaunt man in a pinstriped suit stepped out of the portal, wielding a rapier and grinning maniacally. What a magnificent castle, he declared, twirling his mustache. Perfect for a proper battle. Next emerged a pale, ethereal woman in a skin-tight black dress, followed by two solemn-faced children, a bald man with sunken eyes, an elderly witch with wild hair, and a lumbering giant of a butler. The assembled Hogwarts defenders stared in shock. "Who the bloody hell are they?" Ron whispered. The woman stepped forward with otherworldly grace. "Greetings. We are the Addams family. I believe we're distantly related to the noble House of Black, and we've come to offer our assistance." McGonagall pushed through the crowd, wand still raised cautiously. "The House of Black. Are you with Bellatrix Lestrange?" "Bella? Little Bella is here." The woman's red lips curved into a smile. "How delightful. I haven't seen her since she was a tempestuous child trying to torture her first house elf. Family reunions are so precious during times of conflict." Harry stepped forward, wand still raised. "Are you Death Eaters?" The man in the pinstriped suit laughed boisterously. "Death Eaters? No, no, my boy. We're Addamses. We don't eat death, we dance with it." To demonstrate, he grabbed his wife's hand and performed a quick, passionate tango dip right there in the middle of the crisis. McGonagall looked thoroughly bewildered. "How did you get in here?" "The castle is sealed with protective enchantments." The teenage girl with braided hair and a blank expression spoke up. "Conventional magic barriers don't affect Addams family magic. We operate on different principles." As if to punctuate her statement, the castle shook with another bombardment from outside. "The Death Eaters are breaking through the North Tower defenses," someone shouted from the doorway. "Excellent!" the pinstriped man exclaimed. "Shall we introduce ourselves to the party crashers, my dear?" "Indeed, Gomez," his wife agreed. "Children, do be careful with the living." "Yes, mother," the braided girl and stocky boy replied in unison, with the enthusiasm of kids being reminded to brush their teeth. Before anyone could stop them, the strange family moved with surprising speed toward the sound of battle. Harry, Ron, and Hermione exchanged bewildered looks before racing after them, McGonagall close behind. They emerged onto a corridor where a section of wall had been blasted open. 3 Death Eaters had breached this entry point and were dueling with members of Dumbledore's army. Crucio, a masked Death Eater shouted, aiming at Neville, who had arrived just ahead of them. Before the spell could hit, the bald man from the strange family leapt forward with surprising agility. The red light of the Cruciatus curse struck him directly in the chest, but instead of falling in agony, he giggled as if being tickled. "Ooh, tingly," he exclaimed, his face splitting into a manic grin. "Do it again." The Death Eater stumbled back in shock. "What the?" The bald man placed a finger on each side of his head and somehow channeled the absorbed spell energy back at the Death Eater, who flew backward into the wall and collapsed in a heap. "Uncle Fester has always been an excellent conductor," the pale woman explained to a dumbfounded McGonagall. "Magical energy, electricity, it's all the same to him." Meanwhile, the hulking butler had simply picked up another Death Eater by the scruff of his neck and dangled him out the broken wall, seemingly unaffected by the spells bouncing off his back. "Lurch, don't drop him yet," called the teenager with braids. "I want to try something first." She raised what looked like a small crossbow and fired. The arrow transformed mid-flight into a swarm of bats that surrounded the suspended Death Eater's head, causing him to scream and drop his wand in panic. The third Death Eater, seeing his companions so easily dispatched, turned to flee, only to find his path blocked by the pinstriped man, who was casually flipping a knife. "Leaving so soon? But we've only just met." With a flick of his wrist, he sent the knife flying. It pinned the Death Eater's sleeve to the wall with remarkable precision, without drawing blood. "Avada Kedavra," the trapped Death Eater shouted in desperation, sending the killing curse directly at the strange man. Hermione gasped, but to everyone's astonishment, the green light seemed to be absorbed into the man's chest. He patted his suit where it hit and grinned. "Ah, invigorating. Nothing like a killing curse before dinner to stimulate the appetite." "The Addams family has a unique relationship with death," the pale woman explained, seeing their shocked faces. Such curses tend to be ineffective. Bloody hell, Ron whispered. Where have these people been all year? The Death Eater who'd cast the killing curse fainted dead away from shock. Gomez surveyed the corridor with apparent disappointment. Is that all? I was hoping for more of a challenge. A tremendous crash from outside answered him as a giant's club smashed against the castle's magical barriers. That's more like it, he declared, rubbing his hands together with glee. Lurch, I believe those are relatives of yours. The butler groaned in response and cracked his knuckles. McGonagall finally recovered her composure enough to speak. Mr. Addams, was it? While your assistance appears effective, I must understand your intentions. Why have you come to Hogwarts? Blood calls to blood, Professor, the pale woman answered. I am Morticia Addams, descended from the Black family. When blood magic is performed at this scale, it resonates through our familial connections. The teenage girl stepped forward. I'm Wednesday Addams. That's my brother Pugsley, my uncle Fester, Grandmama, and Lurch. Oh, and this is Thing. A disembodied hand crawled out of Gomez's pocket and waved at the group. Neville yelped and jumped back. We felt the disturbance in the cosmic balance, Morticia continued. This dark wizard has committed abominations against the natural order of death itself. While we Addamses appreciate the macabre, we understand its proper place in the grand scheme. You mean the Horcruxes, Harry said, studying them carefully. How do you know about those? Grandmama cackled. Boy, when you've lived as long as I have, you recognize the stench of fractured souls. That noseless fellow reeks of it. Another explosion rocked the castle. Through the broken wall, they could see Death Eaters mounting a fresh assault on the main courtyard. Perhaps we should continue this discussion later. Gomez suggested brightly, drawing his rapier. The night is young, and there are so many Death Eaters to meet. Without waiting for an answer, he leapt through the broken wall and slid down the debris toward the battle below with a wild piche. He's always so eager, Morticia sighed fondly. Shall we join him? Before McGonagall could protest, the rest of the Addams family followed their patriarch, each in their own distinctive way. Lurch simply jumped down the 3-story drop, landing with an earth-shaking thud that actually knocked several approaching Death Eaters off their feet. Uncle Fester rolled down like a human cannonball. Pugsley used some kind of homemade grappling hook that looked distinctly unsafe. Wednesday merely gave the Hogwarts defenders a deadpan look before vanishing in a swirl of shadows and reappearing on the battlefield below. Are we really letting them fight? Hermione asked, bewildered. We don't even know if we can trust them. I don't think we could stop them if we tried, Harry replied, watching in amazement as the strange family engaged with the Death Eaters. And they seem to be on our side, at least for now. Look at that. Ron pointed, his voice a mixture of horror and admiration. Below, the pinstriped man, Gomez, was taking on 3 Death Eaters simultaneously, his rapier somehow deflecting spells as he fought with the flair of an acrobat. His wife Morticia stood calmly in the midst of battle, whispering to the plants in the courtyard, which were now growing at an alarming rate, their vines wrapping around Death Eaters' ankles. We should help them, Harry decided, raising his wand. Whatever their reasons, they're fighting Voldemort, and right now, that makes them allies. Together, the Hogwarts defenders rushed to join the battle. Down in the courtyard, Gomez was having the time of his life. He hadn't enjoyed himself this much since the time he and Morticia had accidentally stumbled into that revolution in a small Eastern European country. The name escaped him, but the pitchforks and torches had been delightful. You call that a killing curse, he taunted, dodging another green jet of light. Put some feeling into it, man. The Death Eater, clearly unnerved by his opponent's enthusiasm, backed away uncertainly. Nearby, Wednesday had cornered a particularly nasty-looking Death Eater. Your skull structure is fascinating, she told him in her monotone voice. I'd love to add it to my collection. Stay back, the man stammered, firing spell after spell, all of which seemed to pass through her as if she were made of smoke. "An Addams never takes a skull before its time," she said with the patient tone of someone reciting a familiar family motto. "But I'm willing to wait." Pugsley was having a grand time rolling what looked like enchanted bowling balls toward groups of Death Eaters. When the balls reached their targets, they exploded into swarms of scorpions, causing panic and disarray. "Strike!" he shouted gleefully as three masked figures fell over each other trying to escape the arachnids. Lurch had engaged directly with one of Voldemort's giants, meeting its strength for strength. The giant seemed confused to find a humanoid nearly as tall as itself and considerably more coordinated. Uncle Fester had discovered, to his delight, that he could absorb any spell cast at him and then channel that energy through his fingertips as lightning. He was cackling madly as he ran around the battlefield, deliberately drawing fire from Death Eaters only to zap them moments later. "This is better than electric eels in the bathtub," he crowed. Grandmama had set up an impromptu brewing station behind a fallen statue and was concocting potions at alarming speed, occasionally tossing bottles that exploded into multicolored smoke. Death Eaters who inhaled the fumes variously turned into toads, broke into uncontrollable tap dancing, or simply fainted with expressions of horror frozen on their faces. "Family recipe," she cackled when a nearby Order member looked at her in shock. "The secret ingredient is optimism. They never expect that from a potion that smells like grave dirt." Morticia glided through the battle like a spectre, untouched by the chaos around her. Where she passed, shadows deepened and responded to her gentle commands, tripping Death Eaters or temporarily blinding them. "Hogwarts has such vibrant magical energy," she commented to Professor Flitwick as she passed him dueling two opponents. "The accumulated angst of teenagers really does strengthen the ambient magic. We must remember that for Wednesday's next birthday party." Thing had made himself useful by scuttling unseen across the battlefield, snatching wands from unsuspecting Death Eaters at critical moments, leaving them defenseless against counterattacks. The Hogwarts defenders, initially shocked by the Addams family's unorthodox fighting methods, quickly adapted to fighting alongside them. The tide of battle was turning. "They're actually helping us win," Hermione said in disbelief as she, Harry, and Ron made their way through the battle, still focused on their mission to find the remaining Horcruxes. Harry nodded, ducking a stray curse. "Let's use this chance. We still need to find something of Ravenclaw's." "Harry Potter." A voice cut through the noise of battle. Luna Lovegood was making her way toward them, somehow managing to look as dreamy and unperturbed as ever despite the chaos. "I've been looking for you. I think I know what you need, Ravenclaw's lost diadem." "The diadem? Do you know where it is?" Harry asked urgently. "Not exactly, but I know what it looks like. I can show you a replica in the Ravenclaw common room." "What's a diadem?" Ron asked. "It's a kind of crown," Hermione explained quickly. "Luna, that would be incredibly helpful." "A crown, you say?" Wednesday Addams appeared suddenly beside them, making Ron jump and swear loudly. "Grandmama has been looking for a proper crown for her collection." "Is this one important?" "Very," Harry said cautiously. "It may contain a piece of Voldemort's soul." Instead of showing disgust or fear, Wednesday's eyes lit up with what might have been excitement, the first real emotion they'd seen on her face. A soul fragment trapped in an object? How perfectly macabre. I've only read about such things in Great-Uncle Balthazar's journals. "You know about Horcruxes?" Hermione asked, surprised. "Horcruxes? Is that what wizards call them? How unimaginative." Wednesday twirled one of her braids thoughtfully. "We Addamses call them soul jars, and they're considered rather crude. The truly sophisticated way to achieve immortality involves a willing sacrifice and a full moon, not this hackneyed soul-ripping." "You know how to destroy them?" Harry asked urgently. "Of course. Anything that damages a soul beyond magical repair will do. Basilisk venom, fiend fire, the usual. But we have quicker methods. Mother brought the soul separator." It was a wedding gift from Aunt Lavinia, who collected souls as a hobby before the witch trials made it unfashionable. Harry, Ron, and Hermione exchanged looks that mixed hope with bewilderment. "Would your mother be willing to help us?" Harry asked. Wednesday shrugged. "Mother loves family reunions. If this dark wizard has scattered pieces of himself around, she'd consider it a matter of proper etiquette to help reassemble him, for a final meeting, of course." Another explosion rocked the castle, closer this time. "They've breached the entrance hall," someone shouted. "We need to split up," Harry decided quickly. "Luna and I will go look for the diadem. Ron, Hermione, you find the Addams, parents, and see if they can help with the Horcruxes." Wednesday raised an eyebrow. "I'll accompany these two. They'll never find Mother otherwise. She tends to blend with the shadows when she's enjoying herself." Ron didn't look thrilled at the prospect of being guided by the eerily calm teenager, but there was no time to argue. The four split up, with Harry and Luna heading toward Ravenclaw Tower while Ron, Hermione, and Wednesday turned back toward the heart of the battle. In the entrance hall, Gomez and Morticia had found themselves face to face with some of Voldemort's elite forces. Bellatrix Lestrange stood at the center of a group of Death Eaters, her wild eyes scanning the defenders with maniacal glee until they landed on Morticia. "You," she shrieked, recognition and confusion battling on her face. "You can't be here." "Bella, darling," Morticia greeted her with the warm tone of a distant aunt at a family reunion. "How you've grown. The madness becomes you, it's a family trait, you know." "Blood traitor." Bellatrix spat, raising her wand. "The House of Black disowned your branch centuries ago." "Did they?" Morticia seemed genuinely surprised. "We received a lovely fruit basket. I assumed it was a parting gift rather than a disownment notice. The eyeball plums were particularly juicy." Bellatrix screamed in rage and sent a killing curse directly at Morticia. The green light struck her full in the chest, and then seemed to be absorbed into her pale skin, leaving her unharmed but with a slight flush to her normally alabaster cheeks. "How invigorating," Morticia commented, touching her collarbone lightly. "Your magic has improved since you were a child, Bella." "I'm so proud." Bellatrix's triumphant expression melted into shock and then fury. "Impossible. No one survives the killing curse." "Harry Potter did," Ron muttered from where he, Hermione, and Wednesday had just arrived at the edge of the hall. "Addamses have a unique relationship with death," Morticia explained patiently. "We embrace it as an old friend, not an enemy to be feared. That makes certain spells ineffective. Mother has died 6 times, Wednesday informed Ron and Hermione matter-of-factly. Death keeps sending her back. He says she redecorates the afterlife in a way that makes the other souls uncomfortable." Gomez slid to his wife's side, beaming proudly. "It's true. My Tish has an eye for the morbid that even death appreciates." The skull motifs she added to the pearly gates were a particular point of contention. Bellatrix, for once, seemed at a loss for words. The Death Eaters behind her shifted uncomfortably. Taking advantage of their hesitation, Morticia raised her arms, and the shadows around her feet began to grow and spread across the floor toward the Death Eaters. "Now, Bella, do introduce me to your friends. Any family of yours is family of ours, after all." "They're not family, they're followers of the Dark Lord," Bellatrix snarled, recovering her composure. "The greatest wizard who ever lived." "Oh. Is that the noseless fellow we saw through the portal?" Gomez asked, twirling his mustache thoughtfully. "Interesting fashion choice, splitting his soul like that. Very retro." At the mention of Voldemort's Horcruxes, Bellatrix's face contorted with fury and fear. "How dare you speak of the Dark Lord's magic? Crucio." The torture curse shot toward Gomez, who caught it on the blade of his rapier like a baseball player making a casual catch. The spell crackled along the metal, which began to glow red-hot. "Exquisite craftsmanship, this sword," he commented, examining the blade as if they were discussing antiques at a garden party. Forged by cousin Vlad in the 15th century. Absorbs magic quite nicely. He flicked the rapier, sending the spell energy back toward the ceiling, where it blasted a hole through the ancient stonework. Chunks of masonry fell, forcing the Death Eaters to scatter. Wednesday tugged on Hermione's sleeve. Now would be a good time to ask them about the soul jar. Hermione nodded and stepped forward cautiously. Mr. and Mrs. Addams. Your daughter mentioned you might have a way to help us destroy Horcruxes. Morticia turned, shadows still swirling at her feet. Horcruxes. Ah yes, that's what wizards call them. How many pieces has this Dark Lord fragmented himself into? 7, we think, Ron replied. We've destroyed 3, maybe 4. 7. Gomez looked genuinely appalled. That's just excessive. No wonder he looks so poorly. The soul isn't meant to be divided like a pizza. We've been hunting them all year, Hermione explained. There's still Hufflepuff's cup, something of Ravenclaw's, his snake, and Voldemort himself. A Horcrux in a living creature. Morticia raised an elegant eyebrow. How unspeakably cruel. To the creature, I mean. Imagine sharing your body with a fragment of that man's soul. Bellatrix had recovered and was organizing her Death Eaters for another attack. Enough of this. Kill them all. The Dark Lord approaches. A fresh wave of spells flew toward them. Gomez leapt in front of his wife, deflecting curses with his rapier while Morticia calmly opened a small handbag she carried. The soul separator should help with your problem, she told Hermione, pulling out what looked like an ancient silver hand mirror. A family heirloom. It draws fragmented souls back to their source, where they can be dealt with properly. Can it work from a distance? Hermione asked, ducking as a spell flew over her head. With the proper enhancements, yes. Wednesday has quite a talent for such modifications. Wednesday nodded. I'll need some specialized ingredients. Blood of the enemy, bone of the ancestor, we just did that ritual, Ron interrupted, looking queasy. Got Voldemort his body back. Not keen on a repeat. How fortunate, Wednesday replied, not looking remotely concerned about their discomfort. Then the magical connection is already established. That will make things much simpler. A massive explosion shook the entire castle, more powerful than any previous blast. The fighting in the entrance hall paused momentarily as dust and debris rained from the ceiling. He's coming, Harry's voice called out as he raced down a staircase, Luna close behind him. In his hand, he clutched what appeared to be a tarnished tiara. Voldemort's coming, and he's furious. The moment Harry entered the hall clutching the diadem, Bellatrix's eyes widened in recognition and fear. The diadem. Stop him. But before any of the Death Eaters could act, a disembodied thing, scuttled across the floor at incredible speed, climbed up Harry's leg, and snatched the diadem from his grip. What the? Harry began, startled. Thing leapt to the ground and raced toward Morticia, who calmly held out her palm. The hand deposited the diadem there before giving what looked remarkably like a bow and scurrying to hide in Gomez's pocket. Excellent work, Thing, Morticia praised, examining the diadem with professional interest. Yes, I can feel the soul fragment. Crude work, but effective. Give that back. Bellatrix shrieked, sending a blasting curse toward Morticia. Uncle Fester, who had just entered the hall, leapt into the path of the spell, absorbing it with a giggle. Tickles, he announced before sending a bolt of blue electricity back at Bellatrix, who barely dodged. We need to destroy it now, Harry urged, approaching Morticia cautiously. Before Voldemort gets here. Destroy it? Morticia looked mildly scandalized. That would be wasteful. The soul fragment should be extracted first. Wednesday, dear, would you do the honors? Wednesday approached her mother and took both the diadem and the silver mirror. She placed the diadem on the floor and held the mirror over it, angling the reflective surface downward. Stand back, she advised in her monotone voice. Soul extraction can be messy. The Hogwarts defenders and even the Death Eaters seemed transfixed as Wednesday began to chant in a language none of them recognized. It sounded ancient and somehow wrong, as if the words themselves were twisted. The mirror began to glow with an eerie blue light. The diadem trembled, then began to emit a high-pitched whine. Black smoke seeped from it, rising toward the mirror, which seemed to be drawing it in. Bellatrix, shaking off her momentary fascination, raised her wand. Stop them. But at that moment, a much greater threat materialized. The castle walls trembled as a cold, high voice magically amplified, reached every corner of Hogwarts. Harry Potter. I know you can hear me. Voldemort's voice sent chills through everyone present. You have fought valiantly, but in vain. I do not wish this magical blood spilled. Give me Harry Potter, and none shall be harmed. The voice paused, then continued with a hint of confusion. And bring me these, newcomers. These Addamses. They too shall answer to Lord Voldemort. Gomez perked up at this. He knows us. How flattering. We did decline his dinner invitation back in '79, Morticia reminded him. Perhaps he took offense. Nonsense, Tish. We sent a lovely funeral wreath as an apology. Black roses and poison ivy, quite expensive. The voice of Voldemort continued, growing colder. You have 1 hour. Deliver Potter and the Addams family to me in the Forbidden Forest, or I shall enter the battle myself. You have been warned. As the voice faded, the diadem gave one final shudder before the last of the black smoke was sucked into Wednesday's mirror. The tiara, now cleansed of dark magic, lay innocuously on the floor. One more soul fragment captured, Wednesday announced, holding up the mirror, which now swirled with malevolent darkness beneath its surface. According to Great-Uncle Balthazar's journals, once we have collected the majority of fragments, we can use the mirror to draw the remaining pieces to us, including those still in their original containers. Even the one in Voldemort himself? Harry asked, a desperate hope in his voice. Especially that one, Wednesday confirmed. Though it may kill him in the process. That's rather the point, Ron muttered. Bellatrix, seeing that the diadem had been neutralized, let out a scream of rage and disapparated, her remaining Death Eaters following suit. They're retreating, Hermione observed, surprised. They never do that. They're regrouping, Harry corrected grimly. We've got 1 hour before Voldemort joins the battle personally. 1 hour to find the remaining Horcruxes, Hermione said, determination in her voice. The cup and the snake. And modify the soul separator to work at greater range, Wednesday added. I'll need a quiet place to work. Preferably somewhere with a view of death and destruction for inspiration. The astronomy tower, Luna suggested dreamily. You can see the whole battlefield from there, and it's quiet since Professor Sinistra evacuated her telescopes. Perfect, Wednesday approved, the faintest smile touching her lips. Gomez clapped his hands together. A race against time to gather soul fragments before a climactic battle with a Dark Lord. This is the most fun we've had since that vacation to the Bermuda Triangle. Indeed, darling, Morticia agreed. And to think we almost stayed home for bridge night with the Wilsons. We should split up, Harry decided, taking charge. Hermione, you go with Wednesday to modify that mirror thing. Ron, you and I will keep searching for the cup. Mr. and Mrs. Addams, please, call us Gomez and Morticia, Gomez interrupted cheerfully. Mr. Addams was my father, and he's currently haunting our conservatory. Right. Gomez and Morticia, can you help the Order hold the castle? Your abilities seem effective against Death Eaters. It would be our pleasure, Morticia assured him. Nothing brings a family together like defending a castle under siege. Lurch can reinforce the north battlements, Gomez added. And Pugsley was designing some explosive surprises for anyone trying to cross the covered bridge. Uncle Fester will enjoy the lightning towers, Morticia noted. The ambient magical energy should keep him quite charged up. And what about Thing? Harry asked, still not entirely comfortable with the concept of a sentient disembodied hand. Thing is our best spy, Gomez explained proudly. No one notices a hand scuttling about during a battle. Thing can locate your cup, Morticia suggested. He has an affinity for valuable objects. It's caused some awkwardness at museums. Harry nodded, making a quick decision. All right. Thing goes with Ron and me. Wednesday and Hermione to the astronomy tower. The rest of you, help defend the castle however you can. What about me? Luna asked serenely. Go with Wednesday and Hermione, Harry decided. Your creativity might help with whatever they're doing. As the groups prepared to separate, Pugsley emerged from a corridor, his clothes singed and a manic grin on his round face. The covered bridge is rigged to blow. One pull of this cord, he held up what looked alarmingly like a detonator, and kaboom. Excellent work, my boy. Gomez praised, ruffling his son's hair proudly. You have your mother's talent for destruction. Pugsley beamed at the compliment. 1 hour, Harry reminded everyone. Let's go. As they dispersed, Morticia placed a pale hand on Harry's shoulder, stopping him momentarily. Young man, you carry a burden similar to the diadem, she said softly, her dark eyes seeming to look straight through him. I can sense it. Harry froze. What do you mean? There is a fragment of that man's soul within you as well. It wasn't a question. We will need to address that before this night is over. With that cryptic statement, she glided away to join her husband, leaving Harry staring after her in shock. Somehow, this stranger had identified in moments what had taken Dumbledore years to confirm, and what Harry himself had only recently begun to suspect. Harry, come on. Ron called impatiently from the staircase. We've got less than an hour. Pushing aside his troubling thoughts, Harry raced to join his friend. The clock was ticking, and the fate of Hogwarts, perhaps the entire wizarding world, hung in the balance. In the Forbidden Forest, Lord Voldemort paced angrily before his assembled Death Eaters. Nagini slithered at his feet, agitated by her master's fury. The Addams family, he hissed, his red eyes gleaming in the darkness. After all these years. Bellatrix knelt before him, her head bowed. My lord, they claim connection to the Black family. The woman, she called me cousin. They are more than that, Bella, Voldemort said coldly. They are an abomination, a branch of magic that refuses to bow to any master. I approached them once, in my earlier rise to power. You, my lord? Bellatrix looked up in surprise. Yes. Their magic is unusual. Ancient. I sought to add it to my arsenal. His lipless mouth twisted in a sneer. They declined. Most impolitely. They mentioned your special magical projects, my lord, Bellatrix said hesitantly. They knew about them. Voldemort's eyes flashed dangerously. What did they do? The girl, she had a mirror. She captured the essence from the diadem. What? Voldemort's fury exploded, sending nearby Death Eaters cowering to the ground. The diadem is destroyed. Not destroyed, my lord, captured somehow. The mirror drew out the essence, without damaging the object. Voldemort fell silent, his rage giving way to something rarely seen on his face, concern. He stroked Nagini's head absently as he considered this new threat. The soul separator, he murmured finally. An ancient Addams family artifact. I had thought it merely legend. What does it do, my lord? Bellatrix asked timidly. It collects fragments, Voldemort said, his voice barely above a whisper. And once it has gathered enough, it can summon the remaining pieces. All of them. Understanding dawned on Bellatrix's face, followed by horror. Then we must stop them. Let me go back, my lord. Let me kill them all. No. Voldemort's decision was immediate. They cannot be killed by ordinary means. Their family magic protects them from death itself, it is why I sought their alliance. He paced in silence for several moments before coming to a decision. We will proceed as planned. Potter must die by my hand. As for the Addamses. His red eyes narrowed. I shall deal with them personally. Their interference changes nothing. But despite his confident words, those closest to the Dark Lord could sense something new in his demeanor, a flicker of uncertainty. For the first time since his rebirth, Lord Voldemort seemed genuinely concerned about the outcome of his carefully laid plans. The astronomy tower provided a perfect vantage point to view the destruction below. Fires burned across the grounds of Hogwarts, and giants lumbered near the edge of the Forbidden Forest, waiting for orders to advance. Inside the castle, defenders rushed to reinforce weak points and tend to the wounded. Wednesday Addams, Hermione Granger, and Luna Lovegood had commandeered Professor Sinistra's worktable and spread out their supplies. The soul separator mirror lay at the center, its surface occasionally rippling with the trapped fragment of Voldemort's soul. It's beautiful, Luna commented, peering at the mirror with unabashed curiosity. In a terrifying sort of way. Beauty and terror are often the same thing, Wednesday replied, unpacking various small pouches and bottles from her dress pockets. My mother taught me that. Hermione watched nervously as Wednesday arranged ingredients that looked increasingly disturbing, a vial of black liquid that moved independently of gravity, what appeared to be desiccated bat wings, and a small box that emitted faint whispering sounds when opened. Are you sure this will work? Hermione asked skeptically. I've researched Horcruxes extensively, and there's nothing in any text about drawing them to a central location. Wizarding texts are limited by wizarding imagination, Wednesday replied, carefully measuring powders into a small mortar. The Addams family grimoires contain knowledge predating Merlin. How do you know Harry's connection to you-know-who? Hermione pressed. Your mother mentioned it before we split up. Wednesday paused in her work, fixing Hermione with her intense, unblinking gaze. We Addamses recognize our own. Our family has experimented with soul magic for centuries, ethically, of course. We never take unwilling souls. Of course, Hermione muttered, not entirely reassured. Luna, who had been examining the whispering box with fascination, looked up. You're trying to save Harry, aren't you? Not just defeat Voldemort. Wednesday's expression softened marginally, the equivalent of a warm smile on anyone else. Destruction without purpose is merely vandalism. The goal is to extract the foreign soul fragment while leaving the host intact. Can you really do that? Hermione asked, hope creeping into her voice. With the proper modifications, Wednesday confirmed, returning to her work. The mirror was designed to capture and contain, not to extract with precision. But I've been experimenting with similar processes since I was 7. What kind of experiments? Luna asked with genuine interest. Soul transference, mostly. I successfully placed Grandmama's consciousness in a pumpkin for 3 days during Halloween when I was 9. A ghost of a smile touched Wednesday's lips. The jack-o'-lantern delivered the most frightening prophecies. We still have recordings. Hermione looked torn between horror and fascination. And this will work on Horcruxes? The principle is the same. A soul, even a fragment, yearns to be whole. The mirror creates a resonance with the captured fragment that calls to the others. Wednesday crushed something in the mortar that emitted a faint screaming sound. What we need is selective attraction, to pull Voldemort's soul fragments without damaging Harry's soul in the process. That's incredibly complex magic, Hermione noted, impressed despite herself. Yes, Wednesday agreed simply. Hand me that vial of mercury tears, please. And be careful not to inhale, they cause prophetic nightmares. For the next 20 minutes, they worked in focused silence. Wednesday mixed potions and inscribed tiny runes around the mirror's frame, occasionally instructing Hermione or Luna to hold something or recite an incantation. Luna proved surprisingly adept at the strange magic, her dreamy disposition seeming to align naturally with the Addams family's unconventional approach. As they worked, the sounds of battle occasionally reached them, explosions, shouts, and once, what sounded distinctly like Uncle Fester's manic laughter followed by a tremendous thunderclap. "Your family seems to be enjoying themselves," Hermione observed during a brief pause. "Combat is one of our favorite pastimes," Wednesday confirmed. "Usually we spar with each other, external opponents are a rare treat." "My father says conflict helps reveal our true natures," Luna commented, carefully applying a drop of silver liquid to each corner of the mirror. "He'd like your family. Remind me to give you our address before we leave," Wednesday replied. "Mother loves hosting dinner parties for like-minded souls." A distant explosion, louder than the previous ones, shook the tower slightly. Hermione rushed to the window. "That came from the covered bridge," she exclaimed. "It's collapsing." Indeed, the wooden bridge that connected the castle to the surrounding hills was engulfed in flames, taking with it a contingent of Death Eaters who had been attempting to cross. "Pugsley's work," Wednesday noted with a hint of pride. "He's been experimenting with targeted explosives since he was 4. "Your family is..." Hermione hesitated, searching for a diplomatic word. "Unusual," Wednesday suggested, not looking up from her work. "Macabre? Disturbing to conventional sensibilities?" "Effective," Hermione finished. "Against the Death Eaters, I mean." "Evil fears what it doesn't understand," Wednesday replied. "And nothing confuses true evil more than a family that embraces darkness without being corrupted by it." Luna nodded sagely. "Like how Nargles avoid dirigible plums. The energy signature is similar but fundamentally different." For once, Hermione didn't roll her eyes at Luna's strange comparisons. In the context of the Addams family, it actually made a strange sort of sense. "The mirror is almost ready," Wednesday announced, holding up the now glowing artifact. The surface had changed from silver to a swirling black and purple, with the captured soul fragment visible as a darker spot at the center. "We need one more ingredient, blood willingly given from the one who will activate it." "That would be Harry," Hermione guessed. Wednesday nodded. "His connection to Voldemort makes him the ideal conduit. But he'll need protection when the soul fragments are drawn out, especially the one inside him." "What kind of protection?" Hermione asked warily. "The most powerful kind," Wednesday replied solemnly. "Family." Before Hermione could ask for clarification, the door to the astronomy tower burst open. Harry and Ron rushed in, followed by the scuttling form of Thing, who carried a small golden cup in its grip. "We found it!" Ron exclaimed breathlessly. Or rather, Thing found it. "Bloody brilliant, that hand. Snuck right into the room of requirement where Malfoy had hidden it." Harry looked both exhausted and wired with tension. "Did you finish the modifications?" "We've only got about 20 minutes before Voldemort's deadline." "Just in time," Wednesday confirmed, taking the cup from Thing, who gave what might have been a thumbs up before hopping onto a nearby shelf to watch. "The soul separator is ready. It just needs your blood and activation." Harry barely hesitated before rolling up his sleeve. "What do I need to do?" "First, let me extract the fragment from this cup." Wednesday held the mirror over Hufflepuff's cup and repeated the process they'd used on the diadem. Once again, black smoke was drawn from the object into the mirror, which grew darker and seemed to pulse with malevolent energy. "2 fragments captured," Wednesday announced. "Combined with the ones you've already destroyed, that leaves the snake, and..." Her eyes flicked meaningfully to Harry's scar. "And me," Harry finished grimly. "I know. Your mother mentioned it earlier." Ron and Hermione exchanged worried glances. "Can you remove it without killing Harry?" Hermione asked the question they were all thinking. "Yes," Wednesday replied with quiet confidence. "But it will be painful, and it will require perfect timing." She looked at Harry directly. You'll need to be at the epicenter when all the fragments are drawn together, including the primary soul piece still in Voldemort himself. Harry absorbed this information with remarkable calm. So I need to be facing him when this happens. Ideally, yes. The closer, the better. Ron stepped forward, his face pale but determined. There has to be another way. We can't just hand Harry over to you-know-who. Actually, Luna interjected, her dreamy voice somehow cutting through the tension. That might be exactly what the prophecy requires. Neither can live while the other survives. Harry nodded slowly. I think she's right. This was always going to come down to a direct confrontation. He looked at Wednesday. What do you need me to do? 3 drops of blood on the mirror's surface, she instructed, handing him a small silver pin. Then we complete the binding ritual, and the mirror will be keyed to both you and the soul fragments it already contains. Harry pricked his finger without hesitation and let 3 drops of blood fall onto the swirling surface of the mirror. The blood didn't spread or smear, instead, it seemed to be absorbed immediately, causing the mirror to pulse with a brighter purple light. Wednesday began to chant in that same strange language she'd used earlier, making gestures over the mirror with her pale hands. The temperature in the room seemed to drop, and shadows gathered in the corners despite the torches on the walls. Bind and seek, fragment to whole, draw the shattered to the source, she intoned, switching to English. By blood and darkness, by life and death, complete what was broken. The mirror flashed once, brightly, before settling into a steady, ominous glow. Wednesday carefully wrapped it in a black silk cloth and handed it to Harry. When the time comes, unwrap it and hold it toward Voldemort. The activation phrase is Anima Reverter, Soul Return. Once started, the process cannot be stopped until all fragments have been gathered. Including the one in me, Harry stated, rather than asked. Wednesday nodded. The extraction will be unpleasant. But my family will be there to ensure it doesn't take more than it should. Your family? Ron asked skeptically. No offense, but they seem more likely to enjoy watching someone's soul get ripped out than preventing it. The Addams family has a code, Wednesday replied, unoffended. Death should be dignified, suffering should be purposeful, and family, even temporary, adopted family, is everything. She fixed Harry with her intense gaze. For tonight, you are under our protection. Before Harry could respond, a familiar cold voice echoed throughout the castle once more. Your time is up, Voldemort announced. You have failed to comply with Lord Voldemort's request. The punishment will now begin. From their vantage point, they could see new fires erupting across the grounds as Death Eaters renewed their assault with increased ferocity. We need to get down there, Harry said, carefully tucking the wrapped mirror into his jacket. Everyone's counting on us. As they rushed from the astronomy tower, Hermione pulled Wednesday aside for a moment. I need to ask, why are you helping us? Really? Wednesday considered the question with her usual solemn expression. Magic is neither good nor evil, but it does have a natural balance. What this Voldemort has done offends the very fabric of existence. She paused, then added, also, we Addamses never miss a good party, and what's a better party than the end of the world? With that cryptic response, she followed the others down the spiral staircase toward what promised to be the final confrontation of the Battle of Hogwarts. The Great Hall had been transformed into a command center and hospital. Wounded defenders lay on conjured cots while Madame Pomfrey and volunteers worked frantically to treat them. The remaining Order members and staff had gathered around McGonagall, who was outlining defensive strategies on a magical map of the castle. When Harry entered with Ron, Hermione, Luna, and Wednesday, all eyes turned to them. Potter! Where have you been? McGonagall demanded, though relief was evident in her voice. Working on a way to defeat Voldemort, Harry answered, scanning the room. Where are the rest of the Addams family? As if summoned by the question, the doors to the Great Hall burst open, and the Addamses entered, looking, improbably, like they were having the time of their lives. Gomez, his suit now torn and singed but his grin as wide as ever, had his arm around Morticia, whose perfect composure remained unruffled despite the streak of what looked like blood on her cheek. Uncle Fester literally glowed with absorbed spell energy, giving off enough light that people nearby squinted. Pugsley was gleefully counting on his fingers, apparently tallying explosions. Lurch carried 2 unconscious Death Eaters under his arms like sacks of potatoes. Grandmama hobbled in with her bag of potions, cackling about field testing her newest concoctions. Thing rode on Gomez's shoulder, occasionally gesturing in what looked like excited sign language. 23 Death Eaters, 2 giants, and a pack of werewolves. Gomez announced proudly. Marvelous exercise. The werewolves were particularly spirited dancers, Morticia added with a small smile. Though they seemed confused when I complimented their fur instead of running away. McGonagall looked torn between gratitude and exasperation. While your assistance has been invaluable, Mr. Addams, you know who himself is now joining the battle. I must insist that everyone focus on evacuating the remaining students. Minerva, my dear woman, Gomez replied, bowing gallantly, evacuation is precisely what we wish to avoid. The climax of any good battle requires standing one's ground. We have a plan, Harry interrupted, stepping forward. A way to defeat Voldemort once and for all. But I need to face him directly. A hush fell over the great hall. Potter, that's exactly what he wants, McGonagall protested. I know, Harry said grimly. But this time, I'll have an advantage he doesn't expect. He patted his jacket where the soul separator was hidden. The boy is right, Morticia said, gliding forward. The final confrontation was always inevitable. But now, the terms have changed. How have they changed? Kingsley Shacklebolt asked, his deep voice cutting through the murmurs that had broken out. Vol, you know who has an army. We're outnumbered and exhausted. Numbers, Gomez scoffed, waving a dismissive hand. Quality over quantity, my good man. 1 Addams is worth at least 20 ordinary wizards. What my husband means, Morticia translated smoothly, is that we have a means of attacking Voldemort directly, at his point of greatest vulnerability. His Horcruxes, Harry explained. We found a way to draw them all together and destroy them simultaneously, including the one he doesn't know about. His hand drifted unconsciously to his scar. A new commotion at the entrance drew everyone's attention. Neville Longbottom staggered in, supporting a bleeding Ginny Weasley. They've breached the courtyard, he gasped. Voldemort's with them, and the snake. Nagini, Harry whispered. The final Horcrux. My boy, Gomez clapped a hand on Harry's shoulder, his expression suddenly serious despite his ever-present smile. The time for the grand finale approaches. Are you prepared to face destiny? For a moment, Harry looked his age, just 17, burdened with impossible responsibility. Then his jaw set with determination. I've been preparing for 7 years. Let's end this. Morticia stepped forward and took Harry's face between her pale hands, looking deeply into his eyes. Remember, child. Death is not the enemy. Fear is. And you, Harry Potter, have overcome fear many times already. We should create a diversion, Ron suggested. Something to draw attention while Harry gets close to you-know-who. A diversion? Say no more. Gomez exclaimed enthusiastically. Diversions are an Addams specialty. Fester, my boy, how would you like to become a human cannonball? Uncle Fester's face lit up, literally, as electrical energy crackled around his head. Can I really? I believe there's an old catapult in the clock tower courtyard, Professor Flitwick mentioned, seemingly caught up in the Addams enthusiasm despite himself. Excellent. Gomez rubbed his hands together. Pugsley, how many explosives do you have left? Pugsley emptied his pockets onto a nearby table, revealing an alarming collection of homemade bombs, firecrackers, and what appeared to be miniature dynamite sticks. McGonagall blanched. Mr. Addams, I really must protest. No time for protests, Professor. Gomez interrupted cheerfully. The enemy is at the gates. Lurch, you'll take the main entrance, those giants need a proper wrestling opponent. Lurch groaned in what might have been enthusiasm. Wednesday, my darkest daughter, you'll accompany young Harry. He'll need your expertise with the soul separator. Wednesday nodded solemnly. And Tish, Gomez turned to his wife, his eyes gleaming with admiration, you'll do what you do best, terrify everyone with your deadly grace. You say the sweetest things, darling, Morticia murmured, touching his cheek affectionately. Harry looked around at the bizarre family who had dropped into their lives just hours ago and somehow changed everything. Thank you, he said simply. All of you. Don't thank us yet, my boy, Gomez replied with a wink. The night is young, and so is the death and destruction. Is he always this cheerful about potentially fatal situations? Hermione whispered to Wednesday. Only the really dangerous ones, Wednesday confirmed. The truly lethal scenarios bring out his best spirits. As the Addams family dispersed to their assigned positions, Harry gathered his closest friends. Ron, Hermione, Neville, Luna, Ginny, you focus on the snake. It needs to be destroyed. What about you? Ginny asked, her expression worried despite her injury. I'm going to face him, Harry replied simply. With Wednesday's help, I'll use this. He briefly showed them the wrapped mirror. It will pull all the Horcruxes together, including the one in me. Silence fell as his friends absorbed the implications. Will it kill you? Hermione finally asked, her voice barely a whisper. Not if we time it perfectly, Wednesday answered before Harry could speak. The soul separator will extract only what doesn't belong. We're coming with you, Ron declared firmly. Harry shook his head. The snake is crucial. If anything goes wrong with the mirror, Nagini still needs to die. A tremendous explosion shook the castle, sending dust raining from the enchanted ceiling of the great hall. That's our cue, Harry said, drawing his wand. Whatever happens next, it's been an honor fighting alongside all of you. As Harry turned to leave, Gomez's voice rang out from across the hall where he was distributing weaponry to surprised Hogwarts defenders. Remember the Addams family motto, my boy, he called cheerfully. Sic gorgiemus allos subjectatos nunc, we gladly feast on those who would subdue us. Despite everything, Harry found himself smiling as he and Wednesday headed toward the courtyard and his final confrontation with Lord Voldemort. Chapter 2, Family Values. The courtyard of Hogwarts looked like something out of Pugsley Addams' wildest dreams. Statues animated by Professor McGonagall smashed Death Eaters left and right. Explosions lit up the night sky, casting eerie shadows across the ancient stones. Spells of every color ricocheted off walls, and the air hummed with deadly magic. Harry and Wednesday moved through the chaos with purpose, ducking behind a fallen pillar as a killing curse whizzed overhead. Your family seems to be enjoying themselves, Harry noted as he peered around the edge. In the distance, Uncle Fester rode atop what appeared to be an enchanted gargoyle, cackling madly as he lobbed balls of captured spell energy at fleeing Death Eaters. We don't get out much, Wednesday replied matter-of-factly. Mother worries about public relations ever since Pugsley accidentally blew up the neighbor's gazebo. The restraining order was quite specific. They paused as Bellatrix Lestrange's distinctive cackle echoed across the courtyard, followed by an explosion that sent several Hogwarts defenders flying. Your aunt seems troubled, Wednesday observed. She's not wait, I suppose technically she is related to me through Sirius, Harry realized. Not that it matters. She killed him. Wednesday's eyes gleamed with something like approval. Family feuds are the most vicious kind. We had one that lasted 3 centuries with the Habsburg branch. It ended when Great-Aunt Desmonda married her second cousin and poisoned the entire wedding party. Very romantic. Harry wasn't sure how to respond to that, so he changed the subject. We need to get closer to Voldemort. The soul separator needs to be within range of all the Horcruxes, right? Yes, but, Wednesday paused, tilting her head slightly. Listen. The sounds of battle suddenly dimmed, as though someone had turned down the volume. A cold, high voice carried across the grounds. Harry Potter, Voldemort called, his magically amplified voice reaching every corner of Hogwarts. I grow tired of this game. Come to me in the Forbidden Forest, or watch as I systematically execute your friends. Theatrical, Wednesday commented. Mother would appreciate his flair for dramatics. Harry's grip tightened on his wand. I need to go. Not yet. Wednesday placed a hand on his arm. First, you should know what you're truly facing. She pulled him deeper into the shadows as another explosion rocked the courtyard. When they were relatively secure, she continued in her monotone voice. Your Voldemort visited our family once, long ago. I was very young, but in our family, such encounters are recorded in detail. I believe you should know what happened. Manor Addams, 1979. Gomez Addams was in the middle of his morning routine, fencing with the stuffed bear in the upstairs hallway, when Lurch's distinctive groan echoed through the house. A visitor, old man. Splendid. Gomez thrust the sword into the bear one final time and bounded down the grand staircase, sliding down the last section on the banister. Morticia glided in from the conservatory, a basket of freshly clipped hemlock on her arm. Darling, do try not to impale this one. The last solicitor left such a mess on the carpet. No promises, cara mia, Gomez replied with a wink, adjusting his bow tie. Who could it be at this hour? The Hendersons aren't due for their annual exorcism until next week. Lurch opened the massive front door, revealing a tall, pale man in flowing black robes. Even then, he had an unsettling quality, his features handsome but somehow wrong, as if the skin fit too tightly over the bones beneath. Good evening, the stranger said, his voice soft yet commanding. I am Lord Voldemort. Lord, eh? Gomez's eyes lit up. Splendid title. Come in, come in. Always room for nobility at the Addams residence. Morticia handed her basket to Lurch. Prepare the special tea, Lurch. The one with the deadly nightshade. Our guest looks like he would appreciate the extra kick. You are most gracious, Voldemort said, stepping inside and surveying the macabre decor with evident interest. I've heard much about the unique proclivities of the Addams family. All good things, I hope. Gomez laughed heartily, slapping Voldemort on the back, an action that caused the dark wizard to stiffen momentarily. You have quite a reputation in certain magical circles, Voldemort continued, regaining his composure. Your family's particular talents have persisted despite your separation from mainstream wizarding society. Oh, we've never been much for the mainstream, Morticia said with a serene smile. So restrictive, all those rules about not raising the dead or communing with eldritch entities. They led their guest into the drawing room, where a 7-year-old Wednesday sat at a small table, methodically dissecting a large spider. She looked up briefly as they entered, her expression unreadable. My eldest, Morticia introduced with maternal pride. She's already showing such promise with arthropod anatomy. Voldemort studied the child with newfound interest. The talent manifests early in your bloodline, I see. Addams' blood will out. Gomez declared cheerfully. Little Wednesday here can already communicate with the spirits of the damned. Quite the prodigy. The girl nodded solemnly. They have such interesting stories. Especially the ones who died in especially painful ways. Voldemort smiled, a cold, calculating expression that never reached his eyes. I've come with a proposition, Mr. and Mrs. Addams. I represent a movement dedicated to preserving magical purity and tradition. We seek to create a world where those with true magical heritage rule, as is natural and right. Politics. Gomez exclaimed. Fascinating subject. I once ran for mayor of the local village. Campaign slogan, vote Addams or die trying. garnered 3 votes before they ran me out with pitchforks. Exhilarating experience. This is more than mere politics, Voldemort continued smoothly. This is about the future of all magical beings. I am gathering followers, those who appreciate power in its truest forms. Your family's particular talents would be a valuable addition to my ranks. Morticia sipped her tea thoughtfully. How intriguing. And what would these ranks be called? My followers are known as Death Eaters. Gomez burst into laughter. Death Eaters. Capital name. Though a bit literal, isn't it? We Addamses prefer to dance with death rather than consume it. Much more dignified. Voldemort's expression remained pleasant, but his eyes had hardened. I assure you, Mr. Addams, my followers command respect throughout the wizarding world. We are bringing about a new order. New orders come and go, Morticia observed. The Addams family has witnessed many Dark Lords rise and fall over the centuries. Your ambitions seem conventional by comparison. Something dangerous flashed across Voldemort's face. I am not like those who came before me. I have taken steps to ensure my immortality that no wizard has dared attempt. Immortality? Gomez perked up. Now that's a topic worth discussing. We have an uncle who's been attempting it for 3 centuries. Currently residing in our cellar as a sentient fungus. Would you like to meet him? But Wednesday, who had been quietly observing the conversation, suddenly spoke up. You've broken your soul, she said, her young voice cutting through the room like a knife. I can see the fractures. It's sloppy work. Voldemort's attention snapped to the child, his carefully maintained charm slipping for a moment. What did you say, girl? Horcruxes, Wednesday continued, unperturbed by the dangerous edge in his voice. Great-uncle Balthazar wrote about them in his memoirs. He made one using his pet vulture in 1742. Said it wasn't worth the trouble. The vulture developed a superiority complex and tried to peck out his remaining soul through his eye socket. Morticia beamed with maternal pride. Wednesday has been reading the family grimoires since she was 4. Such a precocious child. You know of Horcruxes, Voldemort said slowly, reassessing the family before him. Few wizards even speak the word. Oh, soul magic is elementary in this household, Gomez declared, puffing his cigar. Though we've found more elegant solutions to the mortality problem over the years. Death visits for bridge night every 3rd Thursday. Terrible player, but an impeccable host in his own realm. Voldemort's expression had grown cold. You speak of matters beyond your understanding. On the contrary, Morticia countered, setting down her teacup. The Addams family understands death better than most. We embrace it as part of life's grand dance. Attempting to cheat it so, inelegantly, shows a fundamental misunderstanding of the natural order. Natural order. Voldemort's voice had dropped to a dangerous whisper. I transcend the natural order. I bend it to my will. Gomez shook his head, genuinely disappointed. That's where you've got it all wrong, old man. You don't bend death, you tango with it. Much more satisfying. I did not come here for philosophy, Voldemort said, rising to his feet. I came to offer the Addams family a place of honor in the new world I am creating. Power, prestige, the freedom to practice your particular magics without interference. A tempting offer, Morticia acknowledged with a gracious nod. But you see, the Addams family already has all the freedom it requires. We've never been particularly concerned with what the outside world thinks of our practices. And prestige? Gomez added with a hearty laugh. The Addams name has been striking fear into hearts since before the founding of Hogwarts. Why, my great-great-grandfather was so feared, they named a plague after him. Wednesday looked up from her spider dissection again. Your soul is unstable, she informed Voldemort matter-of-factly. The fragments are too small. They'll degrade over time. Poor craftsmanship. A flash of genuine anger crossed Voldemort's face, and his hand twitched toward where his wand was concealed. "Careful now," Gomez warned, his ever-present smile taking on a dangerous edge. "We Addamses are gracious hosts, but we do have our limits when it comes to threatening our children." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees as Morticia rose smoothly to her feet. "Perhaps, Lord Voldemort, you should consider your next words very carefully." Something passed between them, a moment of recognition, perhaps, as the dark wizard realized that beneath the bizarre eccentricity of the Addams family lay something ancient and powerful that even he might be wise to fear. Voldemort inclined his head slightly. "I meant no offense to the child. Her perception is remarkable. Wednesday has her mother's eyes," Gomez said proudly. "Sees right through to a person's soul, or what's left of it." "I believe I've taken enough of your time," Voldemort said smoothly, regaining his composure. "Consider my offer. The wizarding world is changing. When the time comes, remember that Lord Voldemort rewards his friends, and punishes his enemies." "How delightfully ominous," Morticia observed with a small smile. "Lurch will show you out. Do mind the carnivorous rug in the foyer, it hasn't been fed today." After Voldemort had departed, Gomez turned to his wife. "Interesting fellow. Bit too obsessed with death for my taste, and that's saying something. There's a difference between embracing the macabre and fearing death so much you mutilate your own soul," Morticia replied thoughtfully. "I sense great pain in him. And great weakness. Will he be trouble?" Gomez asked, suddenly serious. "Undoubtedly. But the Addams family has weathered darker storms." Little Wednesday looked up from her dissection, her dark eyes far too knowing for a child her age. "He'll be back someday. When he's broken himself even more. The truly damaged always return to those who see them clearly." "So Voldemort tried to recruit your family?" Harry asked, pulled back to the present as another explosion shook the courtyard. "He recognized power he couldn't control," Wednesday explained. "My parents declined his offer as politely as possible, given the circumstances. And now you're all here, fighting against him." Wednesday shrugged slightly. "Addamses always pay their debts. He threatened our family once. Now we return the favor." Harry studied her for a moment. "Your sister's right, it is about family." "It always is," Wednesday agreed. "Now, we should move. Voldemort is waiting, and it's rude to keep death waiting too long." They rose from their hiding place just as a new wave of spells illuminated the night sky. The battle for Hogwarts had entered its most desperate phase. Elsewhere in the castle, Hermione and Luna had joined forces with Grandmama Addams, who had commandeered Professor Slughorn's potions classroom and transformed it into something that would have given the Hogwarts Board of Governors collective heart failure. Bubbling cauldrons of suspicious colors lined every surface. Ingredients that were definitely not in the Hogwarts curriculum, including what appeared to be a mummified hand and several jars of eyeballs, were being chopped, ground, and mixed with alarming enthusiasm. "Stir counterclockwise 3 times, then add the powdered moonstone," Grandmama instructed Hermione, who was working on a potion that shifted between silver and black like liquid mercury. Luna was carefully collecting the steam from another cauldron in tiny glass vials. "The vapor patterns remind me of Raxpert migrations," she observed dreamily. "They always flow toward troubled minds." "The girl has the sight," Grandmama cackled approvingly. "Rare these days. Most young people are too busy with their electronic doohickeys to notice the spirit world leaking through the cracks." "What exactly are we making?" Hermione asked, trying to maintain her scientific composure despite the fact that her cauldron had just whispered something in Latin. "Protection potions, dearie," Grandmama explained, tossing what looked suspiciously like a severed toe into her own cauldron. "But not your standard shield charms in liquid form, no, no. These tap into much older magic. Blood protection. Soul shielding. Death deterrence. For Harry." Hermione guessed. Grandmama nodded, her wild gray hair bobbing. "That boy's got a date with destiny, and my granddaughter is chaperoning. We need to make sure his soul stays put when the separator does its work. Professor McGonagall said you've combined your protective enchantments with hers around the castle, Luna noted, carefully corking another vial of potion vapor. The Death Eaters can't break through in the places you've reinforced. Minerva knows her stuff, Grandmama acknowledged. Bit rigid with the methodology, but solid technique. I added a few family specialties to her wards. Anyone trying to break through gets a taste of the old country's hospitality. As if on cue, distant screaming echoed from somewhere in the castle, followed by what sounded like maniacal laughter. That'll be the hand of glory we installed in the third-floor corridor, Grandmama explained cheerfully. Reaches right into your chest and tickles your darkest fears. Harmless, really, but terribly effective at discouraging uninvited guests. Hermione tried not to look alarmed. Is that legal? Legal, illegal, Grandmama waved dismissively. Such modern concepts. In my day, magic was magic, the ministry didn't get their wands in a twist about classification. How old are you exactly? Luna asked with genuine curiosity. Grandmama cackled. Let's just say I remember when Hogwarts was just a gleam in the founder's eyes. Rowena and I used to exchange recipes. Smart woman, but her potions always tasted too clean. No character. Before Hermione could process this bombshell of historical information, the door burst open. Neville Longbottom stumbled in, supporting a wounded Seamus Finnegan. Death Eaters broke through near the kitchens, Neville gasped. They've got some kind of cursed fire, regular water spells won't stop it. Grandmama's eyes lit up. Cursed fire, eh? About time someone brought out the interesting stuff. She hobbled to a dusty trunk in the corner and began rummaging through it, tossing aside what looked like shrunken heads and bottled bat wings. Aha, she exclaimed triumphantly, pulling out a clay jar sealed with wax and covered in symbols that made Hermione's eyes hurt to look at directly. Tears of the Leviathan. Collected during the Third Crusade by Great-Uncle Vlad. Only substance known to quench hellfire, Greek fire, and demonic immolation. She thrust the jar into Neville's free hand. Just splash it on the flames. But do mind your aim, it has certain side effects on human skin. Temporary translucence being the least troublesome. Neville looked like he wanted to ask several follow-up questions, but another explosion from below decided the matter for him. With a quick nod of thanks, he helped Seamus back out the door, jar clutched carefully in his hand. Now, where were we? Grandmama turned back to her potions. Ah yes. The soul-binding tincture needs another drop of freely given blood. Hermione dear, would you do the honors? Just a small prick, nothing compared to what that boy will face before the night's end. Hermione hesitated only briefly before rolling up her sleeve. As strange as the Addams family was, she couldn't deny their effectiveness. And right now, Harry needed every advantage he could get. In the clock tower courtyard, Pugsley Addams had found his people. Fred and George Weasley had immediately recognized a kindred spirit in the stocky boy with the maniacal grin and pockets full of homemade explosives. So this one, Pugsley explained, holding up what looked like a small metal pineapple, releases a cloud of confusion gas. Anyone who breathes it starts seeing their worst nightmares walking around in bunny slippers. Fred examined it with professional interest. Wicked. How long does the effect last? Depends on how guilty their conscience is, Pugsley shrugged. Clean souls, maybe 10 minutes. Real baddies? They could be hallucinating for days. We tested it on Uncle Fester once, and he had a great time, said it reminded him of his bachelor party in Transylvania. George held up one of their own creations, a small firework shaped like a dragon. Our wildfire whiz-bangs multiply when hit with a stunning spell. Nearly drove Umbridge batty last year. Pugsley's eyes widened with appreciation. Multiplication effect. I never thought of that. He dug into another pocket and pulled out a handful of what looked like jacks, but with suspicious green slime oozing between the points. What if we combined these bouncing boggats with your multiplying charm? The twins exchanged identical looks of devious delight. Pugsley, my man, Fred said, throwing an arm around the younger boy's shoulders, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Or at least some beautiful explosions, George added with a grin. Their impromptu weapons development session was interrupted as Percy Weasley ran into the courtyard, his glasses askew. Death Eaters breaching the viaduct, he shouted. At least 30 of them, with giants providing cover. The twins and Pugsley exchanged looks of identical glee. Field test. Fred suggested. Field test, Pugsley agreed, stuffing his pockets with their combined creations. They raced toward the viaduct, Percy trailing behind and looking increasingly concerned about what his brothers and their new friend had planned. When they reached the stone bridge that connected the castle to the surrounding hills, they found a desperate situation. A group of Hogwarts defenders led by Professor Sprout was trying to hold back a surge of Death Eaters, but they were clearly outnumbered. Perfect, Pugsley murmured, pulling out a handful of their hybrid explosives. Wide open space, lots of targets, minimal collateral damage to innocent bystanders. You sound just like our product testing checklist, George noted admiringly. Fred was already calculating trajectories. If we hit the middle of their formation, the stun and multiply effect should create enough chaos to break their advance. And if we add these, Pugsley held up the slime-covered jacks, the boggats will make them see whatever they fear most. Brilliant, the twins said in unison. Without further discussion, they spread out along the defenders' line and began lobbing their creations into the midst of the advancing Death Eaters. The first few explosives went largely unnoticed, small objects that bounced harmlessly between the feet of Voldemort's followers. Then Fred called out, "Cover your eyes and ears." The Hogwarts defenders ducked just as the first explosion triggered a chain reaction. The courtyard erupted in a kaleidoscope of colors and sounds, whizzing fireworks that multiplied every time a Death Eater attempted to destroy them with magic, bouncing jacks that exploded into clouds of sickly green mist, and spinning pinwheels that shot out sparks capable of penetrating magical shields. When the defenders dared to look up again, the scene before them was one of glorious chaos. Death Eaters ran in all directions, many screaming in terror at enemies only they could see. Others were tangled in magical nets that had dropped from exploding spheres. Some had been transformed into large, confused-looking canaries. Canary creams, George explained to an impressed Pugsley. We infused the explosive powder with our patent-pending transformation formula. The best part, Fred added with a wicked grin, is that they can't tell which effects are real and which are hallucinations. Pugsley wiped away what might have been a tear of joy. This is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. He pulled out another, larger device from his seemingly bottomless pocket. Ready for Phase 2? The twins' eyes widened at the sight of the complicated contraption with its multiple fuses and ominously ticking timer. Is that, George began. The Addams Family Special, Pugsley confirmed proudly. Designed by my father for our annual 4th of July celebration. It's sort of a family tradition to end the night with something memorable. Percy, who had been watching the proceedings with a mixture of horror and reluctant admiration, finally found his voice. Is it safe? Pugsley looked genuinely puzzled by the question. Safe? Of course not. Where would be the fun in that? Before Percy could protest further, Pugsley had already activated the device and hurled it toward the viaduct itself, where it landed directly in the path of the giants who had been providing backup for the now scattered Death Eaters. You might want to take cover, Pugsley advised casually, ducking behind a fallen section of wall. The twins didn't need to be told twice, dragging a sputtering Percy down with them just as the device detonated with a sound like the end of the world. The explosion wasn't just loud, it was symphonic, layers of blasts building on each other in a crescendo of destruction. The viaduct shuddered, stones cracking under the strain, as multicolored flames raced along its length. When the dust cleared, the middle section of the ancient bridge had collapsed entirely, taking with it several unfortunate giants and cutting off the Death Eater advance completely. Pugsley peered over the wall, his face split by the widest grin imaginable. Father will be so proud. That was even better than when we demolished the Danube Bridge during our European vacation. Fred and George stared at him with newfound respect and just a hint of healthy fear. Remind me never to get on your family's bad side, Fred muttered. Are all American wizarding families like yours? George asked. Pugsley shrugged. We don't really socialize with other magical families. The last time we attended a wizarding community picnic, the Ministry of Magic issued a restraining order. Something about inappropriate use of garden gnomes and a violation of the International Statute of Secrecy. Professor Sprout approached them, her hat askew and a slightly dazed expression on her dirt-smudged face. Mr. Weasley, and Mr. Addams, I presume. I don't know whether to award house points or issue detentions until the end of time. We've saved the viaduct entrance, Professor, Fred pointed out. By destroying the viaduct, Percy added, adjusting his glasses with shaking hands. A strategic sacrifice, George countered. They can't get across now, can they? Neither can anyone else, Percy muttered. Pugsley looked entirely unconcerned by the structural damage. Father says destruction is just another form of renovation. Opens up all sorts of possibilities for redesign. Professor Sprout seemed to decide that in the current crisis, results mattered more than methods. Well done, boys. Now perhaps you could direct your talents toward the clock tower courtyard. We have reports of acromantulas breaching that entrance. Pugsley's eyes lit up like Christmas had come early. Giant spiders. Wednesday will be so jealous. She collects their venom for her crossbow bolts. As they headed toward their next target, Fred nudged Pugsley. Your sister sounds interesting. Wednesday. Oh, she's the normal one in the family, Pugsley replied cheerfully. You should meet our cousins. It takes 3 full moons and a blood sacrifice just to summon them for Thanksgiving dinner. In the castle's east wing, Morticia Addams glided through the corridors with deadly grace, shadows swirling around her feet like devoted pets. Unlike the chaotic fighting elsewhere in the castle, her passage was marked by an eerie silence. Death Eaters who encountered her simply stopped. Not falling dramatically or screaming in pain, just going utterly still, their eyes wide with a fear so primal it transcended sound. Professor McGonagall, who had been coordinating the defense of this section of the castle, found herself both disturbed and impressed by her strange ally's effectiveness. Mrs. Addams, she acknowledged as Morticia approached, stepping carefully around a Death Eater who appeared to be frozen in the midst of casting a curse, his mouth open in a silent scream. Your methods are unorthodox. Please, call me Morticia, she replied with a small, elegant smile. And I find that in matters of defense, the classics are often most effective. Fear is the mind killer, after all. What exactly did you do to them? McGonagall asked, gesturing to the immobilized attackers. A simple matter of forcing them to confront their own mortality, Morticia explained. Most people go through life pretending death isn't patiently waiting for them at every moment. I merely removed that comforting illusion. McGonagall, who had faced death more times than she cared to count in her long life, felt a chill at Morticia's casual explanation. And they'll recover? Oh yes. Eventually. Though they may develop a newfound appreciation for memento mori artwork. Morticia glanced around the corridor thoughtfully. This wing feels familiar. The Black family influence in the architecture, perhaps. My mother's side had similar taste in gargoyles. Before McGonagall could respond, a cackling laugh echoed from around the corner, followed by flashes of spell light and the sound of breaking glass. Bella, Morticia said softly, her expression shifting to something almost like fondness. Still making an entrance, I see. Bellatrix Lestrange, McGonagall confirmed grimly, raising her wand. She's Voldemort's most dangerous follower. She's family, Morticia corrected gently. Distant, yes, but blood calls to blood. Allow me to speak with her, Professor. Mrs. Addams, Morticia, Bellatrix is not known for her willingness to talk. The black women rarely are, Morticia agreed with a small smile. We prefer action to words. It's a family trait. Without waiting for McGonagall's approval, Morticia glided around the corner toward the sounds of destruction. McGonagall, against her better judgment, followed. They found Bellatrix in what had once been a classroom, now reduced to splinters of desks and shattered windows. She was dueling with Professor Flitwick, who despite his diminutive size was holding his own against the deranged witch's onslaught. "Bella, darling," Morticia called out, her voice cutting through the chaos like silk over steel. "You always did know how to redecorate a room with style." Bellatrix whirled around, her wild eyes widening at the sight of Morticia. "You," she spat, momentarily forgetting Flitwick, who wisely retreated to McGonagall's side. "The family disgrace returns." "Family disgrace?" Morticia raised a perfect eyebrow. Such a harsh term for a simple matter of divergent interests. The Addams branch merely chose a different path from the mainstream black family traditions. "You abandoned pureblood principles." Bellatrix snarled, raising her wand. "Consorting with mudbloods and blood traitors." "On the contrary," Morticia replied calmly. "The Addams family has maintained its magical heritage with remarkable consistency for centuries. We simply define purity differently. Magic is magic, Bella dear. Limiting one's definition only limits one's power." Something flickered in Bellatrix's mad eyes, a moment of uncertainty, perhaps even curiosity. "The Dark Lord says your family practices obscene forms of magic. Perversions of the natural order. And yet," Morticia observed, taking a step closer, "your Dark Lord has split his own soul into fragments, breaking the most fundamental law of nature. A rather hypocritical position, wouldn't you say?" Bellatrix's face contorted with rage. "How dare you question the Dark Lord's methods? Crucio!" The torture curse shot straight at Morticia's heart, but instead of striking her, it seemed to be absorbed into the shadows that swirled around her feet. The darkness rippled like disturbed water, then settled again. "Bella," Morticia sighed, genuinely disappointed. "Don't you remember your family history? The black women always had an affinity for shadow magic. Your great-grandmother Elidora was particularly gifted. It's in our blood." "Lies!" Bellatrix shrieked, though her voice held a note of uncertainty. "The noble house of Black follows the old ways." "The old ways?" Morticia laughed softly, the sound like distant wind chimes. "Child, what your Lord Voldemort practices is mere parlor tricks compared to the true old magic. The magic that flows in our veins. In your veins, if you'd only remember." For a brief moment, something changed in Bellatrix's face, a flicker of recognition, perhaps even longing. Then it was gone, replaced by the familiar mask of fanaticism. "Enough. Avada Kedavra." The killing curse erupted from Bellatrix's wand with such force that McGonagall gasped, certain they were about to witness Morticia's death. But rather than dodge or attempt to block the unblockable curse, Morticia simply opened her arms as if welcoming an old friend. The green light struck her full in the chest, and then seemed to sink into her body like water into parched earth. For a moment, Morticia's pale skin took on an unearthly glow, her eyes closing as if in pleasure. "Exquisite," she murmured, opening her eyes again to meet Bellatrix's shocked stare. "You always did have such raw power, Bella. It's a pity you've channeled it so, predictably." "Impossible," Bellatrix whispered, taking a step back. "No one survives the killing curse. Death and I have an understanding," Morticia explained simply. "We've danced together so many times, he no longer tries to lead." With a fluid motion too fast to follow, Morticia extended her hand. The shadows at her feet surged forward, wrapping around Bellatrix like living ropes. The witch screamed, more in outrage than pain, as she found herself bound in darkness. "Now then," Morticia said, approaching her captive with the serene smile never leaving her face, let's have a proper family reunion, shall we? There's so much you've forgotten about your heritage, cousin. She placed a pale hand against Bellatrix's forehead. The effect was immediate. Bellatrix's eyes widened, her mouth opening in a silent scream as images and memories not her own flooded her consciousness. Remember, Bella, Morticia whispered. Remember the true Black family legacy. Not the sanitized version Walburga taught, but the ancient power that flowed in Cassiopeia's veins. The shadows that answered to Elidora's call. The price of true immortality that Phineas Nigellus discovered in the forgotten tombs. McGonagall and Flitwick watched in astonished silence as Bellatrix Lestrange, Voldemort's most feared lieutenant, trembled like a child under Morticia's gentle touch. When Morticia finally stepped back, Bellatrix slumped to the floor, the shadow bonds dissipating. Her eyes were wide and unfocused, her breathing uneven. "What did you do to her?" McGonagall asked, finding her voice at last. "I merely reminded her of who she truly is," Morticia replied, straightening the sleeves of her dress. "The Black family magic runs deep. Deeper than Voldemort's indoctrination. Whether she chooses to embrace that knowledge or reject it will be her decision." Bellatrix slowly raised her head, looking at Morticia with an expression that mixed horror, confusion, and something that might have been awe. "The veil," she whispered. "You've walked through it. And returned." "Many times," Morticia confirmed. "Death is merely another room in the house of existence, Bella. One your master fears too much to ever truly understand." With surprising gentleness, Morticia helped Bellatrix to her feet. "Now, you have a choice to make, cousin. The path you've been following leads only to oblivion, not the glorious kind, but the sad, diminished erasure of everything that makes you uniquely yourself. The other path, well, that would require courage of a different sort than you're accustomed to." For a long moment, the two women stared at each other, black blood recognizing black blood across the divide of their different choices. Then Bellatrix jerked away, her familiar mad gleam returning to her eyes, though perhaps not as brightly as before. "The Dark Lord is coming," she hissed, backing toward the shattered window. "And all your family tricks won't save Potter then." With a final, conflicted look at Morticia, Bellatrix turned and leapt through the window, disappearing into the night. "Well," Flitwick said after a moment of stunned silence, "that was unexpected." "Family reunions often are," Morticia replied serenely. "Especially in the Black family." McGonagall studied her strange ally with new eyes. "You gave her a choice." "Everyone deserves that much," Morticia said simply. "Even those who have made terrible ones in the past." A distant explosion shook the castle, reminding them that the battle continued to rage. "Shall we continue our patrol, Professor?" Morticia suggested, as casually as if proposing an evening stroll. "I believe my husband will be looking for me soon. He gets so delightfully worked up during a good fight." As they moved on, McGonagall found herself wondering just how much of wizarding history had been shaped by families like the Addamses, operating in the shadows, practicing magics too strange or terrible for the mainstream to acknowledge, yet ultimately following their own mysterious moral code. On the grounds near the Forbidden Forest, Lurch had found his calling. Hagrid's half-brother Grawp was proving to be an excellent tag-team partner against Voldemort's giants, who seemed thoroughly confused to be facing organized resistance from their own kind. "Grawp smash!" the young giant bellowed enthusiastically, hurling a boulder at one of the larger attackers. Lurch groaned in agreement, delivering a perfect uppercut to another giant who had been attempting to uproot one of the Whomping Willow's cousins. Together, the odd pair had created an effective defensive line at the forest's edge. Death Eaters attempting to flank the castle from this direction found themselves facing a most unusual obstacle, a perfectly dressed butler with the strength of 10 men and an enthusiastic young giant wearing what appeared to be one of Hagrid's tents fashioned into a makeshift shirt. Nearby, Uncle Fester had discovered that the astronomy tower's lightning rod channeled magical energy in fascinating ways. By connecting himself to it, via methods best not described in detail, he had become a living conduit for the castle's ambient magic, which he redirected with cackling glee at any Death Eater unfortunate enough to come within range. "This beats electric eels in the bathtub," he shouted to no one in particular as he sent a bolt of blue-white energy toward a group of approaching werewolves, who yelped and scattered. "I haven't felt this charged up since I stuck my tongue in that wall socket during the New York blackout of '77. Between Lurch and Grop's physical defense and Uncle Fester's electrical bombardment, this section of the grounds had become a no-go zone for Voldemort's forces. Word had quickly spread among the Death Eater ranks to avoid the bald lightning man and the well-dressed giant at all costs. In the distance, they could see Voldemort's snake Nagini slithering at the forest's edge, but even the massive serpent seemed reluctant to venture closer to Uncle Fester's unpredictable energy blasts. "Oh, is that a pet?" Fester called out, spotting the snake. "I love pets. Come here, scaly friend. Uncle Fester has a little zap for you." Nagini, displaying more intelligence than many of Voldemort's human followers, promptly retreated deeper into the forest. "Ah, don't be shy." Fester yelled after it, generating a small ball of crackling energy between his hands. "I promise it only tingles for the first few seconds. After that, you can't feel anything at all." In the room of requirement, Harry, Ron, and Hermione had regrouped with Wednesday to finalize their desperate plan. The room had configured itself to their needs, a circular space with a central table where the soul separator mirror lay unwrapped, its surface swirling with captured fragments of Voldemort's soul. "Let me get this straight," Ron said, pacing nervously. "Harry has to face you-know-who directly, activate the mirror, and hope it pulls out all the Horcruxes, including the one in him, without killing him in the process." "That's the simplified version, yes," Wednesday confirmed, adjusting the intricate runes inscribed around the mirror's edge. "The soul separator will create a resonance with the fragments it's already captured, drawing the others toward it like magnets of the same polarity." "And what about the fragment in Harry?" Hermione pressed, her face lined with worry. "How can you be sure it won't take his soul too?" "Grandmama's protection potion," Wednesday replied, holding up a small vial of swirling silver liquid that occasionally emitted tiny sparks. "It creates a barrier between Harry's soul and the fragment that's attached itself to him. Like oil and water, they'll separate naturally when the pulling force is applied." "And we're sure this will work?" Ron asked, his voice betraying his skepticism. Wednesday raised an eyebrow. "The Addams family has been separating souls from unwilling hosts for centuries. It's something of a specialty." "That's not exactly reassuring," Ron muttered. Harry, who had been silent throughout this exchange, finally spoke. "It doesn't matter. This is our best chance, maybe our only chance, to end this. I'll do it." "You won't be alone," Wednesday told him, her usually monotone voice softening slightly. "My family will provide a distraction to ensure you can get close enough to Voldemort. And I've made some additional modifications to the mirror." "What kind of modifications?" Hermione asked. Wednesday's lips curled in the ghost of a smile. "Let's just say the soul fragments won't simply be contained. They'll be processed." "Processed?" Ron repeated uneasily. "The Addams family has ways of ensuring that certain threats never return," Wednesday explained. "The afterlife has a special place for those who violate the natural order as egregiously as Tom Riddle has." Before they could question her further, the door to the room of requirement burst open. Neville stumbled in, bleeding from a cut on his forehead but looking grimly determined. "They're pulling back," he announced breathlessly. "All of them, the Death Eaters, the Giants, even the Dementors. Voldemort's called them off." "It's time," Harry realized, rising to his feet. "He's expecting me to come to him." "Harry, no," Hermione began, but Harry cut her off with a shake of his head. "This was always how it was going to end, Hermione. I've accepted that." "Acceptance of death," Wednesday noted approvingly. "The first step toward truly living." "You're not helping," Ron told her irritably. Wednesday shrugged. "The Addams' perspective on mortality differs from the norm. We see death not as an ending, but as a transition. Sometimes a temporary one. Harry's not going to die, Hermione insisted fiercely. The plan will work. Of course it will, Wednesday agreed. But facing the possibility of death without fear is still the key to succeeding. Harry understands this, don't you? Harry met her dark, solemn eyes and nodded. I do. Good. Then drink this. She handed him Grandmama's potion. It tastes terrible and may cause brief hallucinations of your ancestors offering life advice. That's normal. Harry took the vial, stared at it for a moment, then downed it in one gulp. His face contorted at the taste, somewhere between rotten eggs and metal, but he managed to keep it down. How long until it takes effect? He asked, wiping his mouth. It already has, Wednesday replied, pointing to Harry's hand, which had taken on a faint silver glow visible only in the shadows. Your soul is now protected from extraction. The fragment in your scar will be the only thing the separator pulls out. Harry took a deep breath and picked up the mirror, carefully rewrapping it in its black silk cloth. Then I'm ready. We're coming with you, Ron declared, Hermione nodding firmly beside him. Not all the way, Harry said gently. Voldemort wants me alone. But, stay close. When it happens, when it's over, I'll need you. Wednesday produced a small black box from her pocket. Before you go, a precaution. My mother thought you might need this. She opened the box to reveal what looked like a delicate silver pin in the shape of a small hand, a miniature version of Thing. What is it? Harry asked. Insurance, Wednesday replied enigmatically, pinning it to the inside of Harry's collar. If things go wrong, it will activate automatically. Let's call it the Addams family's contribution to your boy who lived legacy. With the weight of destiny pressing down on his shoulders, Harry hugged Ron and Hermione fiercely, shook Wednesday's hand, and stepped toward the door. Remember, Potter, Wednesday called after him. When you face him, look him in the eyes. Death fears those who don't fear it. With a final nod, Harry slipped out into the corridor, the soul separator secure inside his jacket. As the door closed behind him, Ron turned to Wednesday. Is there anything else you forgot to mention about this plan? Any other Addams family surprises we should know about? Wednesday considered the question. Just one. My father never enters a battle without an exit strategy. Neither does my mother. And neither do I. Meaning? Hermione prompted. Meaning, Wednesday replied, her dark eyes gleaming with something that might have been amusement, that the boy who lived may soon earn a new title, the boy who died and came back even more annoyed about it. The forbidden forest loomed dark and ominous as Harry approached its edge. The battle had gone quiet, an unnatural stillness settling over the grounds of Hogwarts. He knew Voldemort waited within, surrounded by his Death Eaters, expecting Harry to surrender himself. As he stepped between the first massive trees, a scuttling sound caught his attention. He looked down to see Thing, the Addams family's pet hand, keeping pace beside him. Thing. What are you doing here? Harry whispered. Thing made a series of gestures that Harry couldn't interpret, then pointed deeper into the forest. You're coming with me? Harry guessed. Thing gave him a thumbs up, then mimed zipping his lips, or would have, if he had lips. Right. Stay hidden. Voldemort can't know you're there. Thing saluted and scurried up Harry's leg, settling into his jacket pocket beside the wrapped soul separator. The small weight was oddly comforting, a reminder that even as he walked willingly toward death, he wasn't entirely alone. The forest grew darker as Harry ventured deeper, following the path he somehow knew would lead to Voldemort. The resurrection stone weighed heavy in his pocket, his own insurance policy, separate from the Addams family's mysterious pin. He thought of turning the stone, of seeing his parents, Sirius, and Lupin one last time before the end. But something stopped him. Perhaps it was what Wednesday had said about facing death without fear. Or perhaps it was the strange certainty that had settled over him since drinking Grandmama's potion, a feeling that death was not the simple endpoint he had always imagined. Light flickered ahead, a clearing illuminated by magical fire. Harry could hear voices now, the murmur of Death Eaters awaiting their master's triumph. In his pocket, Thing gave his leg a reassuring pat. Taking a deep breath, Harry stepped into the clearing. Voldemort stood at its center, Nagini coiled protectively at his feet. The Dark Lord's red eyes gleamed with triumph as he spotted Harry. "Harry Potter," he said softly, "the boy who lived, come to die." The Death Eaters formed a circle around them, their masked faces reflecting the firelight. Harry spotted Bellatrix among them, looking strangely subdued, her eyes darting occasionally to the shadows as if expecting someone to emerge from them. "I'm here," Harry replied simply. "It ends tonight, Tom." Voldemort's lipless mouth twisted in anger at the use of his birth name. "Indeed it does. But before I grant you the mercy of death, I'm curious, where are your new friends? The Addams family seems to have abandoned you to your fate." "They understand something you never will," Harry said, his hand inching toward the wrapped mirror in his pocket. "That death isn't something to fear." "Brave words from a child about to experience it," Voldemort sneered. He raised his wand, pointing it directly at Harry's heart. "Any last request before I end the boy who lived?" It was the opening Harry needed. "Just one," he said, pulling out the soul separator and unwrapping it in one fluid motion. "Look me in the eyes when you kill me. I want the last thing you see to be someone who isn't afraid of you." The mirror's surface caught the firelight, its swirling darkness momentarily captivating even Voldemort. "What is that?" the Dark Lord demanded, a note of uncertainty entering his voice for the first time. Harry held the mirror up between them, its surface now glowing with an eerie purple light. "It's called the soul separator. I believe you've met part of yourself inside it already." Recognition and then alarm flashed across Voldemort's serpentine features. "The diadem. The cup." "And soon," Harry continued, feeling strangely calm, "the rest of your soul fragments will join them. Anima revertere." The activation phrase triggered an immediate reaction. The mirror flared blindingly bright, its surface no longer reflective but a swirling vortex of energy. A high-pitched keening filled the clearing, causing several Death Eaters to cover their ears in pain. Voldemort's face contorted in rage and, for the first time, fear. "What have you done?" he screamed, raising his wand. "Avada Kedavra." The killing curse shot toward Harry, but instead of striking him, it was absorbed into the mirror's vortex, causing the swirling energy to flare green momentarily. Then something extraordinary happened. Nagini, who had been coiled at Voldemort's feet, suddenly began to writhe in agony. Black smoke poured from the great snake's mouth, drawn inexorably toward the soul separator. The Horcrux within the snake was being forcibly extracted. Voldemort screamed in fury and pain, dropping to one knee as he felt another piece of his soul torn away. "Stop this! Stop this now!" But it was too late. The process had begun and could not be halted. The mirror pulsed with increasing intensity, drawing not only the fragment from Nagini but reaching across the boundaries of space toward the remaining Horcruxes scattered throughout Britain. Harry felt a searing pain in his scar, worse than anything he had experienced before. It was as if someone had pressed a white-hot iron against his forehead. He stumbled, nearly dropping the mirror, but Thing reached out from his pocket and steadied his grip. "Keep going, Harry," a voice called from the edge of the clearing. Harry turned his head slightly, still keeping the mirror pointed at Voldemort, to see Gomez Addams standing there, rapier drawn, with Morticia by his side. Somehow, they had followed him into the forest undetected. "The connection is forming," Morticia called. "Hold steady." The Death Eaters, seeing these newcomers, raised their wands, but Voldemort waved them down. "No," he commanded, his voice strained with pain. "The mirror, any magic directed at them will only make it stronger." Bellatrix stood frozen, her eyes locked on Morticia, who gave her a small, knowing nod. The pain in Harry's scar reached an unbearable crescendo. He felt as if his head would split open, the foreign presence within him fighting desperately to remain attached. Through watering eyes, he saw Voldemort on his knees now, his body seeming to flicker and distort as the mirror's pull intensified. "Now, Wednesday!" Gomez shouted into the darkness. From somewhere unseen, Wednesday Addams began to chant in that ancient, terrible language Harry had heard her use before. The words seemed to physically affect the air around them, making it dense and charged with potential. The silver pin on Harry's collar suddenly grew warm against his skin. He felt a strange sensation, as if his body were becoming lighter, less substantial. For a terrifying moment, he thought he might be dying after all. Then the pain in his scar peaked and, like a rotten tooth finally extracted, the Horcrux tore free. Harry saw it emerge as a cloud of oily black smoke from his own forehead, sucked immediately into the soul separator's vortex. The relief was immediate and overwhelming. Harry gasped as his mind felt truly his own for the first time in his life. Colors seemed brighter, sounds clearer, as if a filter had been removed from his senses. Voldemort, however, was far from relieved. As the last Horcrux was torn from Harry, the Dark Lord collapsed completely, his body convulsing. The soul separator continued its work, now pulling at the main portion of soul still residing in Voldemort's body. "No!" Voldemort shrieked, his voice no longer cold and commanding but high with terror. "I cannot die. I am Lord Voldemort. I am immortal." "Nothing is immortal," Morticia said softly, stepping into the clearing. "Not even death itself." With a final, desperate effort, Voldemort raised his wand toward Harry. "If I fall, you fall with me. Avada Kedavra." The killing curse shot toward Harry, who had no time to dodge. But before it could strike him, the silver pin on his collar activated fully. Harry felt a strange displacement, as if his body were momentarily somewhere else, and the curse passed through the space he occupied without effect. Wednesday's chanting reached a crescendo, and the soul separator gave one final, tremendous pulse. Voldemort's body arched backward, mouth open in a silent scream, as the last fragment of his soul was torn free and sucked into the mirror. A moment of perfect stillness followed. The soul separator's surface swirled with the collected fragments of Voldemort's mutilated soul, now completely extracted from all its anchors. Voldemort's body lay on the ground, neither dead nor alive but in some terrible in-between state, empty of the soul that had animated it. Harry looked down at the mirror in his hands, unsure what to do next. The final phase of Wednesday's plan had never been fully explained to him. Morticia approached him calmly, her pale hand outstretched. "The separator has done its work, Harry. Now we must complete the cycle." Harry handed her the mirror, relieved to be free of its weight. The Addams matriarch held it reverently, studying the swirling darkness within. "So much potential," she murmured. "So thoroughly wasted." She turned to where Voldemort lay. "Tom Marvolo Riddle, you chose to split your soul in fear of death. Now you shall experience the true consequence of that choice." She handed the mirror to Gomez, who held it high above his head. Addams' family tradition dictates that those who violate the sanctity of the soul must face judgment beyond the veil, he announced with uncharacteristic solemnity. "May whatever awaits you there have mercy, for we certainly wouldn't." With those words, he dashed the mirror to the ground, shattering it into countless fragments. A terrifying shriek erupted from the broken pieces as Voldemort's collected soul fragments were released, not into the world, but somewhere else entirely. A cold wind swept through the clearing, carrying the echoes of that scream away into the darkness between worlds. Voldemort's empty body shuddered once, then crumbled to dust, the magic that had sustained it finally failing without a soul to anchor it. The Death Eaters stood in shocked silence, their master gone, their cause ended in a way none of them had anticipated. One by one, they began to disapparate, fleeing before they could be captured. Only Bellatrix remained, staring at the pile of dust that had been Lord Voldemort with an unreadable expression. "It's over," Harry said quietly, looking down at his hands, which still glowed faintly silver from Grandmama's potion. "He's really gone." Not gone, Wednesday corrected, stepping out from the shadows where she had been conducting her ritual. Merely relocated. The afterlife has a special department for those who damaged their souls beyond repair. They say the paperwork alone is a fate worse than death. Harry might have laughed if he weren't so exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried him through the confrontation was fading, leaving him lightheaded and weak-kneed. Gomez clapped him on the shoulder. "Buck up, my boy. Death-defying heroics take it out of you the first few times. You'll build up stamina with practice." "There won't be any practice," Harry said firmly. "One Dark Lord was enough for me." Morticia gave him an indulgent smile. "One hopes so, but fate has a way of repeating its favorite patterns. Should you find yourself facing another immortality-obsessed megalomaniac, our door is always open." Thing popped out of Harry's pocket and scuttled over to Gomez, climbing up to his shoulder and giving what appeared to be a detailed report via sign language. "Excellent work, Thing," Gomez praised. "Remind me to give you a raise." Harry turned to Bellatrix, who still hadn't moved or spoken. "What about her?" Morticia followed his gaze. "Bella has some decisions to make." "Don't you, cousin?" Bellatrix finally tore her eyes from Voldemort's remains. "He's gone," she whispered, sounding lost. "He was everything." "No," Morticia said gently. "He was a moment in time. You are a black. You existed before him, and you will exist after him. The question is, who will you choose to be now?" Something shifted in Bellatrix's mad eyes, a flicker of the person she might have been in another life, before Aszkaban, before Voldemort, before the choices that had led her down her dark path. "The memories you showed me," she said slowly. "The family magic. Is it really still accessible to me?" "Blood calls to blood," Morticia confirmed. "The choice is yours." Bellatrix looked from Morticia to Harry, conflict written across her features. Then, without another word, she disapparated, leaving only a swirl of leaves where she had stood. "Will she turn herself in?" Harry asked doubtfully. "Unlikely," Morticia replied. "But she may find a different path than the one she's been following. The Black family has a talent for reinvention." From the direction of Hogwarts came distant cheers. The defenders had realized something significant had happened. Victory was washing across the grounds like a wave. "We should return," Harry said. "They'll want to know it's over." "Lead on, my boy," Gomez encouraged. A triumphant return is the best part of any adventure. Besides the explosions, of course. As they walked back toward the castle, Harry found himself flanked by the strange family that had arrived so unexpectedly and changed everything. Wednesday fell into step beside him, her expression as solemn as ever. The pin, Harry remembered suddenly, touching his collar. What did it do exactly? That killing curse should have hit me. Temporary incorporeality, Wednesday explained. An Addams family specialty. For a moment, you existed between states, neither fully alive nor dead, but somewhere in between. The curse couldn't affect what it couldn't fully interact with. Like a ghost. More like a quantum uncertainty. You were simultaneously here and not here. Seeing Harry's confusion, she added, Great Uncle Fester developed it after an unfortunate incident with a firing squad in Romania. It only works for a few seconds, but that's usually enough. As they emerged from the forest, the castle of Hogwarts came into view, parts of it in ruins but still standing defiantly against the night sky. Figures were running across the grounds toward them, Ron and Hermione in the lead, with what looked like the entire remaining defense force behind them. "Harry!" Hermione cried, flinging herself into his arms. "You're alive. Is it true? Is he gone?" Harry hugged her tightly. "He's gone. For good this time." Ron clapped him on the back, his face split by an enormous grin. "Bloody brilliant, mate. How did it happen? Did the mirror thing work?" "Perfectly," Wednesday confirmed. The soul separator extracted all fragments and contained them until final disposal. Disposal? Hermione questioned. What exactly happened to the soul pieces? Gomez twirled his mustache. Let's just say they've been returned to sender. The cosmic mail service is terribly efficient when it comes to souls that have overstayed their welcome in the mortal realm. Before Hermione could press for a clearer explanation, they were surrounded by celebrating defenders. The Weasleys, Neville, Luna, the Order members, and the Hogwarts staff all converged on them, voices raised in joy and relief. McGonagall reached Harry first, her stern face softened by emotion. Potter, she said simply, placing a hand on his shoulder. Then, to everyone's surprise, she pulled him into a brief, fierce hug. As the celebration swirled around them, Pugsley fought his way through the crowd, his clothes singed and his face smudged with soot but grinning from ear to ear. Did I miss it? He asked Wednesday eagerly. Did we get to see Voldemort's soul get torn apart? You missed the main event, his sister confirmed. But I recorded the soul extraction frequency. We can replicate the sound effects when we get home. Wicked! Pugsley exclaimed. I bet it'll make a great addition to our Halloween haunted house next year. Uncle Fester bounded up, still crackling with excess magical energy. Is it group hug time? I love group hugs. He wrapped his arms around the nearest people, who happened to be Professor Flitwick and a very startled Filch, and lifted them both off the ground in his enthusiasm. As dawn broke over Hogwarts, the survivors of the battle gathered in the partially demolished Great Hall. The house tables had been pushed aside, and people sat in mixed groups, differences forgotten in the shared relief of victory. The dead had been laid out with dignity in a side chamber, where families mourned their losses even as they celebrated their deliverance. The Addams family gathered near the staff table, drawing curious looks from the Hogwarts students who hadn't directly witnessed their contributions to the battle. Gomez was regaling a group of wide-eyed first-years with a highly embellished account of his duel with 3 Death Eaters simultaneously, while Morticia charmed Professor Sprout with her extensive knowledge of poisonous plant varieties. Wednesday sat between Luna and Hermione, engaged in what appeared to be a serious discussion about the theoretical applications of soul magic in Transfiguration. Pugsley and the Weasley twins huddled in a corner, already planning what Fred enthusiastically described as the most epic victory fireworks display in wizarding history. Harry found himself at the center of it all, accepting congratulations and thanks from what seemed like everyone in the castle. But his eyes kept drifting to the strange family that had arrived so suddenly and changed everything. Eventually, he made his way to where Gomez and Morticia stood. I don't know how to thank you, he said simply. Without your help, I don't think we could have defeated him. Nonsense, my boy. Gomez declared, slapping him on the back. You had the strength in you all along. We merely provided the tools and a touch of Addams' family flair. Besides, Morticia added with her enigmatic smile, it's family that matters in the end. And for tonight, at least, you were part of ours. Harry felt a lump form in his throat at her words. Before he could respond, McGonagall approached their group, looking exhausted but resolute. Mr. and Mrs. Addams, she addressed them formally. On behalf of Hogwarts School and, I dare say, the entire wizarding world, I must express our profound gratitude for your intervention. I confess I did not expect such unconventional allies. The unconventional often proves most effective in a crisis, Professor, Morticia replied graciously. Though I fear we've overstayed our welcome. Dawn approaches, and we Addamses have a traditional aversion to excessive sunlight and gratitude. McGonagall's lips twitched in what might have been amusement. Before you go, might I inquire, how exactly did you arrive at Hogwarts? The castle's protective enchantments should have made direct transportation impossible. The Black Family Mirror, Morticia explained. Blood magic transcends conventional barriers. My mother's family always maintained connections to their wizarding roots, even after our branch diverged into alternative magical practices. I see, McGonagall said, though she clearly didn't entirely. And how will you return home? Gomez pulled an ancient pocket watch from his vest and checked it with a flourish. Right about now. As if on cue, the air in the center of the great hall began to shimmer and distort. The same swirling portal that had brought the Addams family to Hogwarts was reforming, its green-black energy pulsing with invitation. Our ride has arrived, Gomez announced cheerfully. Always punctual, interdimensional portals. One of their better qualities. The Hogwarts students and staff watched in fascination as the portal stabilized into a doorway-sized oval, through which they could dimly see the Gothic interior of the Addams mansion. Well, this has been delightful, Gomez declared, shaking hands vigorously with everyone within reach. We really must do it again sometime. Perhaps for a less apocalyptic occasion, a holiday gathering, perhaps. I'm afraid our homeowner's insurance specifically excludes hosting the Addams family, McGonagall replied dryly. Something about an incident in 1947 involving a Transylvanian bat colony? Ah yes, Cousin Vlad's wedding reception, Morticia recalled fondly. The ministry was rather upset about the international statute violations. Such a narrow-minded perspective on interspecies matrimony. The Addams family began to gather their meager belongings, mostly weapons, a few suspicious-looking potions, and in Pugsley's case, what appeared to be souvenirs from the battle in the form of Death Eater masks. Wednesday approached Harry one last time. The pin, she said, indicating the silver hand still attached to his collar. Keep it. You never know when temporary incorporeality might come in handy. Thank you, Harry replied sincerely. For everything. It was educational, she acknowledged with the barest hint of a smile. I've collected 16 new species of spiders from the Forbidden Forest. And watching a soul extraction at such close range provided valuable data for my ongoing research. Harry decided not to ask what exactly that research entailed. Uncle Fester bounded up to them, giving Harry an enthusiastic hug that lifted him off his feet and left him slightly statically charged. Great party, kid. Not enough dancing for my taste, but the explosions made up for it. Lurch merely groaned what might have been a farewell, while Grandmama pressed a small cloth bag into Harry's hand. For nightmares, she explained with a wink. Just sprinkle it under your pillow. Might give you some interesting dreams instead, can't guarantee what kind, but they won't be boring. Finally, it was Gomez and Morticia's turn to say goodbye. Gomez shook Harry's hand vigorously, while Morticia bent to kiss his cheek, leaving a faint lipstick mark that felt oddly cool against his skin. Remember, my boy, Gomez said, suddenly serious beneath his perpetual grin, death is not the end, it's just a different neighborhood. And the Addams family is never more than a nightmare away if you need us again. Our door is always open to family, Morticia added softly. Blood or chosen. With a final wave to the assembled crowd, the Addams family stepped one by one through the swirling portal. Wednesday was the last to enter, pausing to give Harry one final, inscrutable look before disappearing into the vortex. The portal collapsed behind her with a sound like distant thunder, leaving only a scorch mark on the great hall floor as evidence they had ever been there. Well, Ron said into the silence that followed, that was the weirdest family I've ever met. And I'm related to the Lovegoods. Luna, overhearing, smiled serenely. I liked them. They saw things clearly. Daddy would say they're immune to Raxpert infestation. They were certainly effective allies, Hermione admitted. Even if their methods were unorthodox. They saved us, Harry said simply. All of us. As the sunrise streamed through the broken windows of the great hall, illuminating the battered but unbeaten defenders of Hogwarts, Harry found himself touching the small silver pin on his collar. The Addams family had come into their lives like a whirlwind, turning the tide of battle through their strange magic and unshakable family bonds. And somewhere, in a mansion far away both in distance and in perspective, Harry knew they were probably already recounting their adventure as just another Wednesday in the life of the Addams family. Chapter 3, The Surrender. The Great Hall of Hogwarts buzzed with the kind of energy you only get after narrowly avoiding the apocalypse. Students and teachers huddled in relieved groups, swapping increasingly exaggerated battle stories while house elves sipped between them with trays of tea and sandwiches. The ceiling, still enchanted despite chunks missing from the actual roof, showed a brilliant sunrise breaking through storm clouds, nature's own victory banner. Harry sat at what remained of the Gryffindor table, his legs feeling like overcooked noodles now that the adrenaline had drained away. Ron and Hermione flanked him like bodyguards, occasionally shooting worried glances his way whenever he zoned out mid-conversation. To Harry, Ron waved a hand in front of his face. "You still with us, mate?" "Yeah, sorry," Harry blinked, realizing he'd been staring at the silver pin on his collar for nearly a minute. "Just, processing." Hermione squeezed his arm. "That's perfectly normal after what you've been through. Magical exhaustion, psychological trauma, soul extraction, thanks for the diagnosis, Madame Pomfrey," Ron interrupted with an eye roll, pushing a chocolate frog toward Harry. "Eat something. Food helps with the whole, I just defeated the darkest wizard of all time thing." Harry cracked a smile despite himself. "Is that in Hogwarts, a history? The proper post-Dark Lord nutrition plan?" "If it isn't, I'll write the appendix," Hermione promised, looking relieved to see him joking. The temporary peace shattered as the great doors banged open. A delegation of official-looking wizards in ministry robes swept in, led by Kingsley Shacklebolt and trailed by, "Oh bloody hell," Ron groaned. Daily Prophet vultures, right on schedule. Indeed, several reporters scurried behind the ministry officials, magical cameras flashing wildly as they caught sight of Harry. The closest one, a thin wizard with teeth so white they practically glowed, lunged forward. "Harry Potter. Riley Skeeter, nephew of Rita, Daily Prophet front page. Is it true you know who surrendered after facing an American family of dark wizards? Was this a hostile takeover of British magical interests by foreign agents?" Before Harry could respond, McGonagall materialized like an avenging Scottish spirit. "Mr. Skeeter, this school remains under my authority, and these students have just fought a battle. Your questions can wait until official statements are prepared." Kingsley stepped forward, his deep voice carrying effortlessly across the hall. "Professor McGonagall is right. The ministry will handle all press inquiries after we've secured the premises and tended to the wounded." His eyes found Harry. "Mr. Potter, if I might have a word in private? There are some unusual aspects to tonight's events that require clarification." McGonagall straightened. "Minister, acting or otherwise, Mr. Potter deserves rest before any debriefing." "It's okay, Professor," Harry stood up, legs steadier than he expected. "Better to get this sorted now." Kingsley led Harry, Ron and Hermione, who clearly weren't letting Harry out of their sight, to a small antechamber off the Great Hall. Once the door closed behind them, his formal demeanor softened. "First, let me say thank you, all of you," he said quietly. "What you accomplished tonight will be remembered for generations." He focused on Harry. "But I must ask, what exactly happened in that forest? Our reconnaissance wizards report magical signatures unlike anything they've ever recorded. And there are rumors about your unusual allies." Harry touched the silver pin on his collar, feeling its cool metal against his fingertip. "The Addams family," he confirmed. "They arrived through some kind of portal right before the battle started. They said they were related to the Blacks, and they had magic that could help defeat Voldemort." Kingsley's eyebrows shot up. "Related to the House of Black. That would explain a few things. There were always rumors about an American branch that practiced alternative forms of magic." "Alternative is one word for it," Ron muttered. "They had a device, the soul separator," Hermione explained, automatically shifting into lecture mode. "It was designed to extract soul fragments without destroying the vessels containing them. They modified it specifically to target Voldemort's Horcruxes." Kingsley went very still. "So the rumors about Horcruxes were true?" Harry nodded. 7 of them. That's what we've been hunting all year." The acting minister closed his eyes briefly, looking suddenly older. Albus suspected, but even he wasn't certain. He refocused on Harry. And this soul separator, it worked. Better than we expected, Harry said, remembering the horrifying moment when Voldemort's soul fragments had been torn from their anchors. It pulled all the Horcruxes together, including. He touched his scar unconsciously. Including the one in Harry, Hermione finished softly. That's why Voldemort surrendered. When he realized the Addams family's magic could extract and destroy his soul fragments, he knew he couldn't win. Kingsley absorbed this information with the gravity it deserved. These Addamses, where are they now? Gone, Ron said. Went back through their portal thing about an hour ago. Said something about having an aversion to excessive sunlight and gratitude. Probably for the best, Kingsley sighed. The diplomatic complications of foreign wizards, possibly unregistered, participating in what amounts to a British magical civil war would be significant. They saved us, Harry said firmly. All of us. I don't doubt it, Kingsley assured him. And the official story will reflect that, brave allies who came to Britain's aid in her darkest hour. But the exact nature of their magic might be best left ambiguous in official records. Harry thought about Wednesday's emotionless eyes as she conducted rituals in languages that hurt to hear, Uncle Fester absorbing killing curses like they were tickling charms, and Morticia's casual mention of death as another room in the house of existence. Probably wise, he agreed. A commotion outside the door interrupted them. Raised voices, then a familiar aristocratic drawl, I demand to see my son immediately. Kingsley grimaced. The Malfoys. They arrived 10 minutes ago, claiming they switched sides before the end. They did, sort of, Harry admitted reluctantly. Narcissa lied to Voldemort, told him I was dead when she knew I wasn't. That will help their case, Kingsley said. Though it won't erase Lucius's crimes. The door burst open before anyone could respond. Lucius Malfoy stood in the doorway, looking like he'd been through a hurricane, his usually immaculate hair tangled, robes torn, face gaunt with exhaustion and fear. Behind him, Narcissa clutched Draco's arm protectively. Potter, Lucius acknowledged stiffly. I understand we owe you a debt. The words clearly pained him physically to speak. Harry just nodded, too tired for old rivalries. Narcissa stepped forward, her aristocratic features arranged in a carefully neutral expression. Mr. Potter, is it true what they're saying? That the noble House of Black's American branch helped defeat the Dark Lord? You mean your relatives? The Addamses? Harry confirmed, watching surprise flicker across her face. Yeah, they were pretty instrumental. The American branch hasn't communicated with the main family in over a century, Narcissa said, a strange note in her voice. My mother spoke of them sometimes, called them the peculiar ones who practiced magics even the blacks considered excessive. That tracks, Ron muttered. Mrs. Malfoy, Hermione spoke up, your cousin Morticia mentioned a connection through the black family magic. Something about blood calling to blood. A complex emotion crossed Narcissa's face, recognition mixed with something like ancestral pride. The old ways. Mother said they kept to the original black family traditions, from before we came to Britain. She hesitated. Did Morticia mention Bellatrix? Harry exchanged glances with Ron and Hermione. She knew her. Called her Little Bella and talked about family reunions. They met in the forest, Harry added. After Voldemort was defeated. Morticia offered her a choice. A choice? Narcissa's carefully composed mask slipped. What kind of choice? Harry remembered the strange, charged moment between the two women. Something about remembering who she really was. That she existed before Voldemort and would exist after him. Narcissa's hand flew to her throat. And what did Bella choose? She disappeared, Harry said simply. Didn't say anything, just left. Narcissa closed her eyes briefly, the faintest tremor passing through her slender frame. When she opened them again, the perfect pureblood mask was back in place. I see. Thank you, Mr. Potter. Before anyone could say more, another ministry official appeared in the doorway. Minister Shacklebolt. We've got a situation at Aszkaban, mass breakout attempt by the remaining Death Eaters being transported there. Orders requesting backup immediately. Kingsley was already moving. Potter, we'll continue this later. You three stay here where it's safe. Harry, Ron, and Hermione exchanged looks as the adults rushed out. 3 Galleons says we're not staying here, Ron offered. Not taking that bet, Harry replied, already reaching for his wand. The North Sea churned around Aszkaban like it was personally offended by the prison's existence. Rain slashed sideways, turning the approach by broom into what felt like flying through a car wash. Harry, Ron and Hermione had borrowed brooms from the Hogwarts Quidditch supplies and followed the ministry contingent at a safe distance, close enough not to lose them in the storm, far enough not to be sent back. This is insane. Hermione shouted over the wind, her knuckles white around her broom handle. We just survived one battle. Welcome to life with Harry Potter. Ron yelled back. Never a dull moment. Harry would have defended himself if he weren't busy trying not to get blown off his clean sweep by the gale. The dark silhouette of Aszkaban loomed ahead, lightning occasionally illuminating its jagged towers. Even without Dementors, the place radiated menace. They touched down on a narrow stone dock where several ministry boats were already moored. Aurors rushed back and forth, shouting orders and firing occasional spells toward the upper levels where flashes of magical combat lit up the windows. What's the plan? Ron asked, casting a quick impervious charm on his robes as rain soaked them instantly. Find Kingsley, offer to help, Harry said, already moving toward the main entrance. Harry Potter. A young Auror spotted them, eyes widening. You can't be here. The minister specifically said, that we should stay at Hogwarts. Yes, Hermione finished smoothly. But we have information about the prisoners that might be crucial. We need to speak with Minister Shacklebolt immediately. The Auror hesitated, clearly torn between following orders and not arguing with the people who had just defeated Voldemort. Fine, he relented. But stay behind me and keep your heads down. We've got at least 15 Death Eaters barricaded in the high-security wing, and they're not going quietly. He led them through the main doors and into Azkaban's grim interior. Even without Dementors, the place felt wrong, like happiness was a foreign concept the stones themselves rejected. Their footsteps echoed off damp walls as they climbed narrow stairs toward the sounds of fighting. The new prisoners from the battle were being processed when it happened, the Auror explained as they climbed. Someone smuggled in wands, we suspect an Imperius curse on one of the guards. They overpowered the intake team and freed some of the existing prisoners. Any casualties? Harry asked, dreading the answer. 2 guards stunned, one with serious hex damage. No fatalities yet, thank Merlin. They rounded a corner onto a scene of controlled chaos. Aurors had established a defensive position at the end of a long corridor, trading spells with unseen opponents behind a barricade of overturned furniture and magical shields. Kingsley spotted them immediately. Potter. I expressly told you to stay at Hogwarts. Sorry, Minister, Harry said, not sounding sorry at all. Thought you might need backup. Kingsley looked like he wanted to argue but didn't have time. Fine. Stay behind the barricade. They've got hostages, 3 guards. We're trying to negotiate, but they're demanding unacceptable terms. What terms? Hermione asked. Unregistered portkeys out of British jurisdiction, immunity from prosecution, and their wands returned, an Auror with a captain's insignia supplied. Plus the release of all marked Death Eaters currently in custody. So, completely reasonable then, Ron deadpanned. A familiar voice shouted from behind the Death Eaters' barricade. Potter. I know you're there. Come and face me like a man, not hiding behind ministry lapdogs. Harry recognized the voice with a jolt. Raoul. He's their ringleader, Kingsley confirmed grimly. Took charge after we brought in the Hogwarts survivors. Claims Voldemort isn't really defeated, just temporarily set back. Delusional, Hermione muttered. Harry moved closer to the barricade, ignoring Kingsley's warning gesture. Raoul. Voldemort is gone. His soul was extracted and destroyed. There's nothing to come back to. Maniacal laughter echoed down the corridor. Lies. The Dark Lord cannot be killed. The prophecy is fulfilled, Harry cut him off. It's over, Raoul. Surrender now and no one else gets hurt. Surrender? Raoul's voice rose hysterically. Like your American friends made the Dark Lord surrender. We know what really happened, Potter. Those creatures weren't wizards, they were something else. Something unnatural. Harry's hand went instinctively to the silver pin on his collar. They were just different. Like Voldemort was different. Except they understood something he never did. And what's that, Potter? Raoul sneered. That death isn't the enemy, Harry said quietly, remembering Wednesday's solemn face. Fear is. A hush fell over the corridor, broken only by the distant sound of the storm battering the prison walls. Then Raoul's voice came again, lower and more dangerous. Pretty words from a boy who's cheated death one too many times. But let's see how brave you are when other people's lives are at stake. I'm sending out one of our hostages now, what happens to him depends on you, Potter. A guard stumbled into view, clearly under the Imperius curse. His movements were jerky and unnatural as he was forced to walk toward the Auror barricade. He's been hexed, the Auror captain warned. Could be carrying anything, explosive charms, contact poisons. Or just a message, Harry said, noticing a piece of parchment clutched in the guard's hand. The guard stopped halfway down the corridor, his eyes glassy and unfocused. With mechanical movements, he unfolded the parchment and began to read in a monotone voice, to Harry Potter and the Ministry of Magic, the loyal servants of the Dark Lord demand safe passage from this prison. You will provide us with brooms and allow us to depart unhindered. Failure to comply within 10 minutes will result in the execution of the remaining hostages. To demonstrate our resolve. The guard's voice suddenly changed, his face contorting in pain as he fought the Imperius curse. Don't, listen, trap. From behind the Death Eater's barricade, Raoul shouted furiously, Crucio. The guard collapsed, screaming in agony as the unforgivable curse hit him. Harry started forward instinctively, but Kingsley grabbed his arm. That's what they want, the minister warned. To draw you out. We can't just watch them torture him. Harry protested. We won't, Kingsley assured him, then turned to the Auror captain. Shields up, full coverage. Prepare for extraction on my signal. As the Aurors reinforced their magical barriers, a strange sound cut through the guard's screams, a low, mournful melody that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. What is that? Ron whispered, the hair on his arms standing up. Harry recognized it immediately. Wednesday's music box. The one she was using during the ritual in the forest. The haunting tune grew louder, filling the corridor with its otherworldly notes. The guard's scream subsided as the Cruciatus curse seemed to lose its grip on him. On both sides of the barricade, wizards looked around in confusion. Potter. Raoul's voice held a note of panic now. What are you doing? What is this magic? Before Harry could answer, the shadows in the corridor began to move. Not shifting with the light, but flowing like liquid darkness, gathering and coalescing into shapes that were almost human but not quite. It can't be, Hermione breathed. They left. We saw them go through the portal. But as the shadows solidified, there was no mistaking the elegant silhouette of Morticia Addams, materializing from the darkness itself. Behind her, more shapes formed, Wednesday's slim figure, Gomez's dapper outline, Uncle Fester's distinctive bald dome. We forgot something, Morticia said smoothly, stepping fully into the light. She wore the same black dress from the battle, looking completely unruffled by her dramatic entrance. It's so embarrassing when that happens during interdimensional travel. What in Merlin's name, Kingsley started, but Gomez cut him off with an exuberant bow. Minister. Splendid to see you again. Hope we're not interrupting something important. Raoul's voice rose to a terrified shriek. The creatures. They've come back. Defensive positions. From behind the Death Eater's barricade came the sounds of panic, shouted spells, crashing furniture, and the unmistakable pop of hasty disapparition. Strange, Wednesday observed in her monotone. They seem upset to see us. Some people have no appreciation for dramatic entrances, Gomez lamented, twirling his mustache. Morticia glided forward to where the guard lay trembling on the floor. She knelt beside him, her pale hand cool against his forehead. Cruciatus exposure. Unpleasant, but temporary. Grandmama's nerve tonic would clear it right up. Uncle Fester bounded past the astonished Aurors, heading straight for the Death Eater's barricade. Are we playing hide and seek? I love hide and seek. Ready or not, here I come. The Auror captain made a move to stop him, but Kingsley held up a restraining hand, watching with fascinated horror as Fester charged the barricade, absorbing stunning spells like they were gentle taps. Should we help him? Ron asked uncertainly. Wednesday gave him a pitying look. Uncle Fester doesn't need help. The Death Eaters might. Sure enough, the moment Fester disappeared behind the barricade, chaos erupted. Flashes of blue-white energy lit up the corridor, accompanied by Fester's maniacal laughter and the screams of Death Eaters. Objects flew into the air, a shoe, what looked like a wand, and then an entire chair that smashed against the opposite wall. Enthusiastic as always, Morticia commented fondly. The Aurors exchanged bewildered glances, clearly unsure whether to advance or stay put. Kingsley made the decision for them. Forward, but with caution. Secure the hostages first. As they moved cautiously down the corridor, Harry fell into step beside Wednesday. How did you get here? We saw you leave through the portal. We did leave, she confirmed, her dark eyes unreadable. But the pin I gave you acts as a beacon. When it detected danger, it alerted us. Harry touched the silver hand on his collar. It can do that across dimensions. The Addams family has always maintained connections to places we've visited, Wednesday explained as casually as if discussing the weather. Especially places with such exquisite ambient misery. Aszkaban has quite the reputation in certain circles. Behind the barricade, they found a scene of thoroughly one-sided combat. Uncle Fester stood in the center of the room, crackling with absorbed spell energy, while Death Eaters lay scattered in various states of consciousness. None appeared seriously injured, just thoroughly subdued. Raoul himself was pinned to the wall, held there by what looked like knives through his sleeves, a signature Gomez Addams touch. You, Raoul spat when he saw Harry. What are these creatures you've summoned? What dark pact have you made? Gomez laughed heartily, slapping the captive Death Eater on the shoulder. Dark pact. My good man, we're simply family friends dropping by. Though I must say, you've chosen a spectacularly gloomy place for a reunion. Wonderful atmosphere. The damp, the despair, the distant screaming, reminds me of summer camp. The Aurors quickly freed the remaining hostages while securing the Death Eaters. Most surrendered without further resistance, thoroughly demoralized by the Addams family's intervention. Kingsley approached Harry, his expression a complicated mix of relief and concern. Potter, while I appreciate the assistance, I think you owe me an explanation about your friend's timely return. Harry held up his collar to show the silver pin. Emergency beacon, apparently. I see. Kingsley eyed the Addamses with new wariness. And they can just appear anywhere you're in danger. Only places with sufficient ambient darkness, Wednesday clarified, overhearing. Aszkaban practically invited us in. The despair here has a particularly rich bouquet, notes of hopelessness with undertones of existential dread. Quite homey, really. Kingsley pinched the bridge of his nose. Right. Well, as acting minister, I should formally thank you for your assistance, but also request that in future, any interventions be coordinated through official ministry channels. Bureaucracy. Gomez exclaimed delightedly. How wonderfully normal. We'll try to remember that next time, Minister, though paperwork and the Addams family have a historically adversarial relationship. Just ask the American IRS about the incident of '63. As the Aurors led the subdued Death Eaters away, Morticia approached Harry. The pin served its purpose, I see. I had a feeling you might need our assistance again before long. Thank you, Harry said sincerely. But I thought you'd gone home for good. Home is wherever family is, Morticia replied simply. And for this brief moment in history, our family's paths have intersected. Uncle Fester bounded over, still crackling with excess energy. This place is fantastic. All those years of misery soaked into the walls, like an all-you-can-eat buffet for emotional vampires. Can we come back for our anniversary, Gomez? Splendid idea, old man. Gomez agreed enthusiastically. Nothing says romance like a maximum security wizard prison. Kingsley cleared his throat. While I'm sure the British Ministry of Magic would be thrilled to host you for special occasions, perhaps we should focus on returning to Hogwarts. There's still much to be done. Of course, Morticia agreed graciously. Though I believe we've forgotten our original purpose in returning. She turned to Wednesday. Darling, didn't you leave something behind at the castle? Wednesday nodded solemnly. My specimen collection from the Forbidden Forest. 16 rare arachnids, 3 samples of unicorn hair, and a thestral fawn. For my research. Research? Hermione couldn't help asking. On magical creature incorporation into cutting-edge necromancy, Wednesday explained matter-of-factly. Traditional reanimation lacks finesse. I'm developing more elegant solutions. Hermione's expression suggested she regretted asking. Well then, Kingsley said with forced brightness, let's not delay your research. I believe we can arrange transportation back to Hogwarts for everyone. Oh, we don't need conventional transportation, Morticia assured him, gesturing to the shadows that had begun swirling at her feet again. We prefer our own methods. Before anyone could protest, the shadows expanded, enveloping not just the Addams family but Harry, Ron, and Hermione as well. The last thing Harry heard was Kingsley's startled exclamation before darkness swallowed them completely. Shadow travel, Harry decided, was both the most efficient and most disturbing form of magical transportation he'd ever experienced. Unlike the crushing pressure of apparition or the nauseating spin of flow powder, shadow walking felt like briefly ceasing to exist, becoming nothing more than a thought adrift in cool darkness before reforming somewhere else. They materialized in the Hogwarts Great Hall, causing several students to scream in surprise as the group appeared from seemingly nowhere. McGonagall, who had been speaking with Professor Flitwick, dropped her teacup in shock. Potter, she exclaimed, recovering quickly. How did you? She broke off as she registered the Addams family's presence. I thought you had departed. We came back for Wednesday's science project, Gomez explained cheerfully. Can't leave future research behind. The girl's a prodigy, already working on her third reanimation thesis. McGonagall's expression suggested she was torn between horrified fascination and a desperate desire not to know any more details. Professor, Harry said quickly, there was an incident at Aszkaban. Death Eaters tried to break out, but it's under control now. I see, McGonagall said faintly, eyeing the Addamses with renewed wariness. And your friends assisted? Uncle Fester got to play with the naughty wizards. Pugsley supplied helpfully from where he'd been showing the Weasley twins what looked suspiciously like miniature explosives. Did they cry? They usually cry when Uncle Fester plays with them. Merely tactical displays of intimidation, Fester corrected with dignity. Though the one with the funny mask did make an interesting squeaking sound. McGonagall closed her eyes briefly, as if praying for strength. When she opened them, she'd regained her composure. While Hogwarts appreciates your continued assistance, I believe the immediate danger has passed. Perhaps it's time to discuss next steps. Indeed, Morticia agreed. Wednesday should collect her specimens, and then we really must be getting back. The family hearse needs feeding, and Kitty becomes so temperamental when his dinner is late. Kitty? Hermione couldn't help asking. Our lion, Wednesday explained. Though there's some debate about his precise species. Grandfather claims he's part manticore. Before Hermione could pursue this concerning piece of information, the great doors opened again. This time it was Percy Weasley, looking important in his ministry robes despite the smudge of soot still visible on his nose. Minister Shacklebolt sends word that the situation at Aszkaban is fully contained, he announced, then faltered as he spotted the Addams family. Oh. You're already here. The minister also requested that you remain at Hogwarts until he arrives to discuss certain diplomatic considerations. Politics again. Gomez exclaimed delightedly. Always a favorite Addams pastime. Great-Uncle Bloodthirst was briefly emperor of a small Eastern European nation before the pitchfork incident. Left quite an impression, they still tell campfire stories about his tax policies. I'm sure they do, McGonagall said faintly. Mr. Weasley, perhaps you could escort Miss Addams to retrieve her specimens, while we await the minister. Percy looked like he'd rather escort a hungry dragon, but he nodded stiffly. Of course, Professor. Wednesday fixed him with her unblinking stare. We'll need to visit the edge of the Forbidden Forest. The specimens are quite delicate, sensitive to light and sudden movements. The Forbidden Forest, Percy repeated weakly. Right. Of course they are. As Percy led Wednesday out of the Great Hall, looking like a man marching to his own execution, Harry turned to find Morticia studying him intently. The pin protected you, she observed. Just as intended. Harry nodded. It knew I was in danger somehow. The silver hand is attuned to your life force now, Morticia explained. A sympathetic connection, like the one you once shared with Voldemort, but benevolent in nature. So you'll always know if I'm in danger. Harry wasn't sure how he felt about that. Only mortal danger, Morticia assured him. Everyday perils, romantic disappointments, and existential crises remain private. Unless they become life-threatening, of course. That's comforting, I guess. The Addams family values privacy, Morticia continued. We merely wish to ensure that after surviving Voldemort, you didn't meet an untimely end to something mundane. Death should be meaningful, don't you think? Before Harry could formulate a response to this unsettling perspective, commotion erupted at the entrance to the Great Hall. Ministry officials were streaming in, led by Kingsley Shacklebolt, who had apparently made record time from Azkaban. Ah, Minister. Gomez greeted him with enthusiasm. Prompt as ever. You really must tell me your secret. Punctuality has never been an Addams' strength. We operate on what Morticia calls existential time, somewhere between eventually and when fate demands it. Kingsley managed a tight smile. Mr. Addams. I see you found an alternative route back to Hogwarts. Shadow walking, Morticia explained. A family specialty, particularly useful for unexpected social calls and avoiding door-to-door salespeople. Kingsley turned to Harry. Potter, a word? He led Harry to a quieter corner of the hall, his expression grave. The situation at Azkaban is under control, but we've got a bigger problem. International magical cooperation is in an uproar about unauthorized foreign wizards intervening in British affairs. The Americans are denying all knowledge of the Addams family, claiming no such wizarding family exists in their registry. They wouldn't, Harry realized. The Addams family doesn't exactly follow conventional wizarding rules. Precisely the concern, Kingsley sighed. Unregistered magical practitioners with abilities that circumvent known magical limitations. The International Confederation of Wizards is already calling for an investigation. Harry felt a flare of protective anger. They saved us. All of us. Without the Addams family, Voldemort would still be out there. I know, Kingsley assured him. And I've made that abundantly clear. But we need to address this officially, establish some kind of diplomatic framework for what happened. Harry glanced over at where Gomez was enthusiastically describing what sounded like a family vacation to a mausoleum to a horrified Professor Sprout. I'm not sure the Addams family does official diplomatic frameworks. That, Kingsley said grimly, is becoming increasingly apparent. Their conversation was interrupted by the return of Percy and Wednesday. Percy looked distinctly traumatized, while Wednesday carried a small black case that occasionally emitted skittering sounds. Specimen retrieval successful, Wednesday reported to her mother. Though some of the Thestrals developed an attachment to me. One tried to follow us back to the castle. You've always had a way with death omens, dear, Morticia said proudly. Percy staggered to where his family sat, collapsing onto the bench beside George. She talks to them, he whispered. The Thestrals. And they listen. Cool, George replied, genuinely impressed. Think she'd teach us how? Imagine the delivery possibilities for the joke shop. Kingsley cleared his throat loudly, drawing everyone's attention. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention please. In light of today's events, I believe some formal recognition is in order. The hall quieted as Kingsley moved to the center, his deep voice carrying easily without magical amplification. Today marks the end of the darkest chapter in recent wizarding history. Lord Voldemort has been defeated, not merely destroyed but truly vanquished beyond any possibility of return. He paused, allowing the significance of those words to sink in. This victory belongs to many, to the brave defenders of Hogwarts, to the Order of the Phoenix, to every witch and wizard who stood against tyranny. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. But special recognition must go to those without whom this outcome would not have been possible. Harry Potter, whose courage and sacrifice have been the cornerstone of our resistance. Applause broke out, causing Harry to flush with embarrassment. And, Kingsley continued once the clapping subsided, to our unexpected allies, the Addams family, whose unique abilities proved decisive in our hour of greatest need. All eyes turned to the Addamses, who accepted the attention with varying reactions, Gomez with a theatrical bow, Morticia with elegant grace, Grandmama with a cackle, Uncle Fester with enthusiastic waving, Lurch with a groan, Pugsley with a grin, and Wednesday with her usual deadpan stare. On behalf of the British Ministry of Magic, and indeed the entire wizarding community, I extend our profound gratitude. Though your methods may be unconventional, your contribution to our victory is beyond question. Gomez stepped forward, twirling his mustache. Minister, you're too kind. For the Addams family, this was merely a delightful diversion, like our weekend in the Bermuda Triangle, but with fewer sea monsters and more British accents. Morticia placed a restraining hand on her husband's arm. What my husband means, Minister, is that we were honored to assist. Family obligation demanded no less. Family obligation? Kingsley questioned. The noble and most ancient House of Black, Morticia clarified. My mother's family. Though our branch chose a different path many generations ago, blood ties remain sacred to us. When we felt the cosmic disturbance caused by Voldemort's soul fragmentation, we knew intervention was necessary. A murmur ran through the hall at this confirmation of the Addams-Black connection. Harry noticed Narcissa Malfoy watching intently from a corner, her aristocratic features betraying unusual interest. Kingsley seized the diplomatic opening. Then perhaps we might formalize this family connection. The British ministry would welcome the opportunity to establish official relations with the American branch of the Black family. Gomez and Morticia exchanged amused glances. Minister, Morticia said delicately, while we appreciate the sentiment, the Addams family has historically maintained a certain, independence from governmental oversight. Our particular brand of magic tends to cause bureaucratic complications. Understatement of the century, Uncle Fester muttered audibly. Perhaps, Morticia continued, a more personal arrangement would be more appropriate. Family to family, rather than through official channels. Kingsley hesitated, clearly torn between diplomatic necessity and practical reality. That would be unconventional. Unconventional is our specialty, Gomez declared proudly. Why, our family Christmas card caused an international incident 3 years running. Something about the singing cursed fruitcake we included, apparently causes prophetic nightmares about tax audits. Before Kingsley could respond, the doors to the great hall burst open once again. This time it was Hagrid, looking wild-eyed and breathless. Professor McGonagall. Minister. Ye need to come quick, it's Bellatrix Lestrange. She's at the edge of the forest, says she wants to surrender. The hall erupted in chaos. Aurors drew wands, students panicked, and ministry officials shouted contradictory orders. Through it all, Morticia remained perfectly calm, exchanging a meaningful glance with Wednesday. Ah, she said softly. Family reunions so often occur at the most dramatic moments. Kingsley raised his hands for silence. Everyone remained calm. Aurors, with me. Potter, you stay here. He fixed Harry with a stern look. I mean it this time. Harry nodded, but as soon as Kingsley and the Aurors rushed out, he turned to Ron and Hermione. We're following them, aren't we? Obviously, Hermione sighed, already standing. Wouldn't miss it, Ron agreed. To Harry's surprise, Morticia stepped forward. We shall accompany you, of course. Family matters should be handled with proper decorum. Without waiting for permission, the entire Addams clan moved toward the doors, the crowd parting before them like water around rocks. Harry, Ron, and Hermione hurried to keep up as they swept through the entrance hall and out onto the grounds. They caught up with Kingsley's group at the edge of the forbidden forest. Bellatrix stood alone in a small clearing, her wild hair whipping in the wind, but something about her was different. The manic gleam in her eyes had dimmed, replaced by an expression Harry had never seen on her face before, uncertainty. Aurors surrounded her in a semicircle, wands trained on her heart, but she made no move to attack or flee. Her own wand lay on the ground at her feet, a gesture of surrender. When she spotted Morticia, something flickered across her gaunt features. Cousin, she acknowledged, her usual mocking tone absent. Bella, Morticia replied warmly, as if greeting her at a family tea party rather than a surrender after a wizarding war. You've made a decision, I see. Bellatrix's gaze shifted between Morticia and the Aurors. The memories you showed me, the black family magic. I want to know more. And in exchange? Kingsley asked sharply, his wand never wavering. Bellatrix straightened, some of her old haughtiness returning. I will provide information. Names, locations, plans. Everything I know about the Dark Lord's remaining supporters. The Aurors exchanged skeptical glances, but Morticia stepped forward, ignoring Kingsley's warning gesture. Bella, darling, honesty becomes you, she said, studying her cousin's face. But I sense there's more to your offer. Bellatrix's composure cracked slightly. I want what you showed me. The old ways. The true black family magic. Not this pale imitation we've been practicing. She gestured contemptuously at her discarded wand. And the murders you've committed? Kingsley demanded. The torture. The lives you've destroyed. Do you expect us to simply forget those crimes? Bellatrix met his gaze unflinchingly. I expect justice, Minister. But before I face that justice, I want to understand what was taken from me, from all of us. The knowledge that was buried, the power that was forgotten. Her eyes returned to Morticia. The truth about who we really are. Harry had never imagined he could feel anything but hatred for Bellatrix Lestrange, but watching her now, stripped of Voldemort's influence, seeking something beyond power for its own sake, he felt an unexpected twinge of pity. Morticia glided forward until she stood directly before Bellatrix, separated only by the invisible line of the Auror's defensive perimeter. With a grace that made the movement seem perfectly natural, she extended her pale hand across that barrier. "Blood calls to blood, cousin," she said softly. "The choice you've made is the first step on a longer journey." Bellatrix hesitated only briefly before taking Morticia's hand. The moment they touched, a visible shiver ran through her, as if some ancient recognition had passed between them. "Minister," Morticia turned to Kingsley, "I believe an arrangement might be possible that serves justice while honoring family obligation." "What kind of arrangement?" Kingsley asked warily. "The Addams family will take responsibility for Bellatrix's rehabilitation," Morticia proposed. "She will face British wizarding justice for her crimes, but during her incarceration, we will oversee her education in the true Black family traditions." "You're suggesting we allow you to teach ancient, potentially dangerous magic to a convicted Death Eater?" Kingsley clarified incredulously. "The magic itself is neither good nor evil," Wednesday interjected, her monotone voice carrying surprising authority. "It's the intent that matters. What Voldemort offered was power without purpose. What we offer is understanding without corruption." Kingsley looked unconvinced. "Regardless of intent, the law must be followed." "Of course," Morticia agreed smoothly. "We merely request visiting privileges and the right to provide educational materials. All under ministry supervision, naturally." Bellatrix, who had been watching this exchange with uncharacteristic patience, suddenly addressed Harry directly. "Potter. You of all people have reason to want me to rot in Aszkaban until I die." Harry met her gaze steadily. "Yes. Yet here you stand, alongside my blood relatives who offer redemption rather than revenge. Why?" It was a good question, one Harry hadn't fully processed himself. He thought about Sirius, about Dobby, about all those who had suffered at Bellatrix's hands. Then he thought about what Dumbledore had always believed, that people could change, that choices mattered more than abilities. "Because ending the cycle of hate matters more than vengeance," he said finally. "And because they showed me that different kinds of magic, different ways of seeing the world, can coexist." Bellatrix studied him with new eyes. "You've changed, Potter. The boy I chased through the ministry would have wanted me dead." "We've all changed," Harry replied simply. Kingsley cleared his throat. "While this philosophical discussion is fascinating, we still have the matter of surrender and custody to address." He turned to Bellatrix. "Bellatrix Lestrange, do you formally surrender to the authority of the Ministry of Magic?" "I do," she replied without hesitation. "And you agree to provide full cooperation regarding remaining Death Eater activities and Voldemort's operations?" "Everything I know," she confirmed. "Very well." Kingsley nodded to the Aurors, who moved forward to take her into custody. "You will be held at the ministry pending trial. Your cooperation will be noted in consideration of sentencing." As the Aurors secured her with magical restraints, Bellatrix looked back at Morticia. "Cousin. The knowledge you promised." "Will be provided," Morticia assured her. "Family doesn't abandon family, Bella. Even those who have lost their way." For a moment, something like gratitude flickered across Bellatrix's face before the Aurors led her away. Kingsley turned to Morticia with a mixture of exasperation and reluctant respect. "Mrs. Addams, while I appreciate your family loyalty, I hope you understand that the ministry cannot allow potentially dangerous magical knowledge to be shared with a war criminal." "Minister," Morticia replied with an enigmatic smile, "the knowledge we intend to share isn't about power or destruction. It's about understanding one's true nature and accepting the consequences of one's choices. Something I believe your justice system also strives for, does it not?" Kingsley looked like he wanted to argue further but was interrupted by the appearance of a silvery lynx Patronus. It spoke with his own voice, "Minister needed at the castle immediately. International delegation arriving." "Perfect timing," he muttered, then addressed the group. We'll continue this discussion later. For now, let's return to the castle. As they walked back, Harry found himself beside Morticia. Do you really think Bellatrix can change? After everything she's done? Change is perhaps not the right word, Morticia mused. Reconnection might be more accurate. The Black family magic Bella seeks isn't about spells or power, it's about understanding death as a natural part of life, not something to be feared or weaponized. That understanding changes perspective, and perspective changes actions. Like Voldemort, Harry realized. He feared death so much he destroyed himself trying to escape it. Precisely, Morticia agreed. While we Addamses embrace the macabre, we never fear it. That's the fundamental difference. Fear corrupts magic, acceptance enhances it. They reached the castle steps just as a delegation of official-looking witches and wizards in formal robes apparat at the edge of the grounds. Leading them was a tall, distinguished wizard with a silver beard and an expression of severe disapproval. Supreme Mugwump O'Banhine, Kingsley identified under his breath. Head of the International Confederation of Wizards. This should be interesting. The international delegation approached with the measured pace of diplomats who understood the power of a dramatic entrance. Supreme Mugwump O'Banhine stopped before Kingsley, deliberately ignoring the Addams family. Minister Shacklebolt, he intoned formally. The International Confederation of Wizards has convened an emergency session regarding reports of unauthorized magical intervention in British affairs by unregistered foreign practitioners. Supreme Mugwump, Kingsley acknowledged with a respectful nod. I was just about to contact the Confederation regarding these exceptional circumstances. Exceptional indeed, O'Banhine said dryly, his gaze finally shifting to the Addams family. Would these be the practitioners in question? Allow me to introduce, Kingsley began, but Gomez bounded forward before he could finish. Gomez Addams, at your service, he declared, seizing O'Banhine's hand and pumping it enthusiastically. Supreme Mugwump, Impressive title. Much more dignified than High Executioner or Grand Inquisitor, though my great-uncle wore both with distinction before the pitchfork incident. O'Banhine extracted his hand with visible distaste. Mr. Addams. The Confederation has no record of your family in any registered wizarding community worldwide. Registration, Gomez laughed as if O'Banhine had made a delightful joke. We Addamses have a long family tradition of avoiding paperwork. Something about our signatures causing spontaneous combustion, most inconvenient for record keeping. Morticia stepped forward smoothly. What my husband means, Supreme Mugwump, is that our family practices a form of magic that predates modern registration systems. We are, however, legitimate descendants of the noble House of Black, a family I believe is well documented in British wizarding records. O'Banhine's eyes narrowed. Convenient claim, though difficult to verify. Regardless, your intervention in a British wizarding conflict without proper diplomatic clearance represents a serious breach of international magical law. Breach of law. Gomez looked genuinely confused. My dear man, we were responding to a family emergency. Blood calling to blood. The cosmic imbalance created by Voldemort's soul-splitting was affecting interdimensional stability. The Supreme Mugwump blinked, clearly not following this explanation. Inter-dimensional? Perhaps, Kingsley intervened diplomatically, this discussion would be better continued inside. The entire wizarding world has undergone a momentous change today. Surely procedural considerations can be addressed after we've all had a chance to appreciate the significance of Voldemort's permanent defeat? O'Banhine hesitated, then nodded stiffly. Very well. The Confederation recognizes the historic nature of today's events. However, the matter of unregistered magical intervention cannot be ignored indefinitely. Wouldn't dream of it. Gomez declared cheerfully. The Addams family never shies away from a good bureaucratic entanglement. Why, our tax audit in 1963 is still ongoing, something about claiming the family graveyard as dependent housing. As they proceeded into the castle, Wednesday fell into step beside Harry. International magical politics, she observed tonelessly. Almost as tedious as regular politics. Will your family be in trouble? Harry asked quietly. For helping us? Wednesday's lips curved in what might have been a smile. The Addams family has existed in the shadows between worlds for centuries, Potter. We were practicing magic while the founders of Hogwarts were still mastering basic levitation. Bureaucrats come and go, but family endures. Inside the Great Hall, an impromptu reception had formed. House elves had produced food and drink, and the mood had shifted from shell-shocked relief to cautious celebration. The international delegation was quickly surrounded by ministry officials, creating a buffer zone of diplomatic conversation. Gomez clapped his hands together. Well, this has been delightful. Dark Lords vanquished, family reunions, bureaucratic entanglements, all the makings of a perfect Addams outing. But I believe it's time for us to depart, Morticia added, checking an ancient-looking timepiece. Kitty will be most displeased if his dinner is delayed further. You're leaving. Harry felt a strange pang of disappointment. But what about the International Confederation? Oh, they'll sort themselves out eventually, Gomez said dismissively. Morticia left them with enough family documentation to keep them busy for decades. Our wedding certificate alone contains 3 previously unknown magical languages and a prophecy about tax season. Uncle Fester bounded over, his pockets bulging suspiciously. All packed and ready. Got some lovely souvenirs too, that room of requirement is quite the treasure trove. McGonagall, overhearing, looked alarmed. Mr. Fester, I do hope you haven't removed any dangerous artifacts from the school. Dangerous? Fester looked offended. I only took the harmless stuff. Like this self-strangling necktie, perfect for Christmas gifts. McGonagall closed her eyes briefly, apparently deciding that whatever Fester had acquired was no longer her problem if he was leaving. Before we go, Morticia said, turning to Harry, Ron, and Hermione, a proper goodbye is in order. Your hospitality, however unexpected, has been most appreciated. Our hospitality? Ron repeated incredulously. You showed up in the middle of a war. Precisely. Gomez beamed. The very best time to visit. Everyone's so lively and purposeful, spells flying, buildings collapsing, reminds me of our family reunions. Wednesday approached Harry, holding out a small black book bound in what looked suspiciously like human skin. For your continued education, she explained. Basic principles of shadow magic and soul manipulation. Nothing too advanced, just enough to ensure you don't accidentally unmake reality if that scar acts up again. Thanks. I think, Harry accepted the book gingerly. Will I see you again? The future is uncertain, Wednesday replied, then added with the ghost of a smile, but interdimensional travel is merely a matter of perspective. The pin will connect us, should true need arise. One by one, the Addams family said their goodbyes, Uncle Fester with bone-crushing hugs, Grandmama with suspicious-looking cookies she insisted would only cause mild hallucinations, nothing permanent, Pugsley with enthusiastic demonstrations of miniature explosives he'd developed with the Weasley twins, and Lurch with solemn groans that somehow conveyed genuine emotion. Finally, only Gomez and Morticia remained. Gomez shook Harry's hand vigorously. Young man, it's been a pleasure. Not every day we get to help vanquish a Dark Lord, well, not every day outside of Transylvania, at least. Morticia took Harry's face between her cool palms, studying him intently. The darkness that was imposed upon you has been removed, but there will always be shadows within. Embrace them, Harry Potter. They are as much a part of you as the light. With that cryptic farewell, she stepped back and joined hands with Gomez. The air between them began to shimmer and distort, the familiar green-black portal forming from nothing. Wait! Hermione called suddenly. How does it work? The portal, the shadow magic, all of it. It defies every magical law I've studied. Wednesday, already half disappeared into the swirling vortex, looked back with that almost smile. Magic isn't bound by laws, Granger. Only by imagination and will. The rest is just conventional thinking. With a final theatrical bow from Gomez and a graceful wave from Morticia, the Addams family stepped through the portal. It collapsed behind them with a sound like distant thunder, leaving only a scorch mark on the great hall floor, identical to the one from their first departure. For a moment, silence fell over the hall, as if everyone was processing the reality that the strangest allies in wizarding history had come and gone twice in one day. "Well," Ron said finally, "that happened." Hermione picked up the black book Wednesday had given Harry, her academic curiosity overcoming her wariness. "This is... I don't even recognize the language some of these notes are written in." Harry touched the silver pin on his collar, feeling its cool metal against his fingertip. "They'll be back," he said with certainty. "Someday. Merlin help us when they do," Ron muttered, but he was smiling. From across the hall, Kingsley caught Harry's eye and raised an eyebrow questioningly. Harry just shrugged. How could he explain the Addams family's departure when he barely understood their arrival in the first place? The Supreme Mugwump was looking around in confusion, clearly trying to locate the strange family that had been the subject of his diplomatic mission. When he spotted the scorch mark on the floor, his face turned an interesting shade of purple. "Minister Shacklebolt," he sputtered. "Where have they gone? This session isn't concluded." Kingsley maintained an impressive diplomatic facade. "It appears the Addams family had a prior engagement, Supreme Mugwump. I'm sure they left all necessary documentation for your review." He gestured to a stack of parchment on a nearby table that definitely hadn't been there moments before. The top sheet bore an elaborate family crest featuring what appeared to be a raven perched on a severed hand. "This is highly irregular." Obanheim protested, though he moved toward the documents with obvious curiosity. "Welcome to the new normal," Harry murmured, exchanging amused glances with Ron and Hermione. As the day wore on, the celebration at Hogwarts evolved from shocked relief to genuine joy. News of Voldemort's defeat spread across the wizarding world, bringing crowds of witches and wizards to Hogsmeade and the edges of the school grounds. Owls arrived by the hundreds, messages of congratulation and gratitude addressed to the defenders of Hogwarts and, most frequently, to Harry himself. Through it all, Harry found himself recounting the story of the Addams family's intervention countless times, each telling met with a mixture of disbelief and fascination. By evening, the tale had already begun transforming into legend, with each version adding new details and embellishments. "I heard the American witch turned Death Eaters into spiders with just a look," a third-year Hufflepuff insisted. "My cousin says the bald one ate a killing curse and burped lightning," another student countered. Harry didn't bother correcting these exaggerations. The truth was strange enough without embellishment, and somehow it felt right that the Addams family should already be passing into wizarding legend, figures too bizarre and wonderful to be contained by mere facts. As night fell, Harry found a quiet moment alone on the partially destroyed astronomy tower. Below, the grounds of Hogwarts were dotted with magical lights as cleanup and repairs continued around the clock. In the distance, centaurs had lit fires at the edge of the Forbidden Forest, their own celebration of Voldemort's defeat. The silver pin on Harry's collar caught the moonlight, gleaming with a light that seemed more than merely reflective. He touched it gently, wondering what strange magic connected him to the Addams family across whatever dimensional barriers separated them. "Couldn't sleep?" Hermione's voice came from behind him. She and Ron approached, carrying mugs of hot chocolate. "Just thinking," Harry admitted, accepting a mug gratefully. "About them?" Ron asked, nodding toward the pin. Harry nodded. "They were exactly what we needed, weren't they? Not just their magic, but their perspective. The way they saw death, darkness, even Voldemort himself. As something to be understood, not feared," Hermione agreed thoughtfully. "I've been reading bits of that book Wednesday gave you. It's challenging traditional magical theory in ways I never considered. Going to revolutionize the wizarding world with Addams family magic." Ron teased. Hermione smiled. Maybe not revolutionize, but expand. There's so much we don't understand about magic itself. So many artificial limitations we've placed on it through conventional thinking, as Wednesday put it. They fell silent for a moment, sipping their hot chocolate and watching the centaur fires flicker in the distance. Do you think Bellatrix will actually change? Ron asked eventually. Or was that all just an act to avoid Aszkaban? Harry considered the question. I think, something real happened when Morticia showed her those family memories. Like she remembered who she was before Voldemort, before Aszkaban. Whether that's enough to truly change her, I don't know. Blood calls to blood, Hermione quoted softly. Family magic runs deep. That's what Morticia kept saying. Speaking of family, Ron said, changing the subject, Mum's insisting you both come to the Burrow once things settle down here. She's already planning a celebration dinner that'll probably feed half of Wizarding Britain. Harry smiled at the thought. I'd like that. As they talked about the future, rebuilding Hogwarts, completing their education, memorial services for the fallen, Harry felt the weight of the past 7 years gradually lifting. There would be challenges ahead, grief to process, a wizarding world to rebuild. But for the first time since he'd learned of the prophecy, his future was truly his own. The silver pin gleamed in the moonlight, a reminder that somewhere beyond conventional reality, the strangest allies he'd ever encountered were going about their peculiar lives, hosting seances, exploring crypts, and probably terrifying their neighbors. And if the wizarding world ever faced another threat too bizarre or terrible for conventional magic to handle? Well, the Addams family was just a dimensional portal away, ready to bring their unique brand of macabre assistance to those they considered, however briefly, family. 1 year later the rebuilt Great Hall of Hogwarts was decorated for the anniversary celebration of Voldemort's defeat. Enchanted candles floated beneath the ceiling, which showed a perfect spring night sky. Students and staff mingled with ministry officials and heroes of the battle in a gathering that managed to balance commemorating the fallen with celebrating their victory. Harry, now an Auror trainee, stood with Ron and Hermione near the memorial wall where the names of those lost had been inscribed in magical golden letters. They raised their glasses in a silent toast to Fred, Lupin, Tonks, and all the others who had given their lives. Hard to believe it's been a year, Ron said, his voice rough with emotion. So much has changed, Hermione agreed. She had returned to Hogwarts to complete her education and was now preparing for a position in the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, specializing in creature rights. Harry nodded, his eyes drawn to the scorch mark that still remained on the Great Hall floor, the last physical evidence of the Addams family's visit. McGonagall had tried numerous cleaning charms, but the mark resisted all attempts at removal. Eventually, she'd given up and declared it a historical artifact. Any word from our unusual friends? Hermione asked, following his gaze. Harry touched the silver pin he still wore on special occasions. Nothing. But then, they said they'd only return if there was a true emergency. Thank Merlin for small mercies, Ron muttered, though his tone was fond rather than genuinely relieved. The celebration continued around them, a testament to how the wizarding world had healed in the year since the Battle of Hogwarts. Kingsley, now officially elected as Minister of Magic, was deep in conversation with McGonagall about educational reforms. George Weasley, still bearing the grief of losing Fred but finding his way forward, was demonstrating new Weasley's Wizard Wheezes products to delighted students. Even the international tension sparked by the Addams family's intervention had eventually resolved. The official record now acknowledged the assistance of affiliated members of the noble House of Black, with most details classified under international magical security protocols. Supreme Mugwumpo Banhine still occasionally demanded further investigation, but as Kingsley Riley noted, some mysteries are best left unexplained. As for Bellatrix Lestrange, her trial had resulted in life imprisonment, but with an unprecedented arrangement allowing regular visits from Black family representatives for what was officially termed cultural education. Rumor had it that Bellatrix had changed dramatically in prison, her manic energy channeled into intense study of ancient family grimoires delivered by Owl from an untraceable location. The evening was winding down when Harry felt a strange vibration from the silver pin. He touched it reflexively, and for a moment, just a heartbeat, he thought he heard Wednesday's monotone voice whisper, "Family endures." Harry smiled to himself. Somewhere beyond conventional reality, the Addams family was undoubtedly embarking on some new macabre adventure. And should the wizarding world ever need them again, he had no doubt they would appear in their own dramatic fashion, ready to demonstrate that sometimes, the most effective way to fight darkness was with a different kind of darkness altogether, one that embraced death as part of life's grand, mysterious dance. "To absent friends," he said, raising his glass one more time. Ron and Hermione joined the toast, unaware of the momentary connection Harry had felt. Above them, the enchanted ceiling showed a shooting star streaking across the night sky, or perhaps it was just Uncle Fester, hurled from some interdimensional catapult, cackling with delight as he soared through the darkness between worlds. Some mysteries, indeed, were best left unexplained. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.